Good news! This podcast is far from dead, as we have assembled quite a core four, much like a foursome that trundled their way down at the yellow brick road. I have brought together a motley crew to talk about Wicked. This is coming out 1 month after the much anticipated movie adaptation of the hit musical has, to be like quite frank, taken the world by storm. And we are going to get into our respective thoughts on the movie, its stranglehold on pop culture at the moment, and what it might mean moving into 2025, where we have an entire other whole ass movie to get to. Of course, I am Mike Bloom. I am joined by someone who is, as always, dancing through life, or at least for the many podcasts she does, Grace Leeder.
I was gonna make a pun for another song, but since you used one, I'll save it for the other two if they want. I was gonna say, what is this feeling? If either of them want to use that one, it's not loathing, Mike. It's not loathing.
Yeah, we'll see. Maury, if you're tapping on a book right now, I imagine that Grace stole your reference.
Yeah, no, I just want to be like dibs on the cowardly lion if we have to like pick our correspondence.
Yeah, we have to work out who's who.
Yeah.
Oh no! All right, Shannon Guss comes in wanting to with the classification.
Yeah, firstly, I will say, getting on the stream before, I was like, everyone go change. Everyone has to be wearing green or pink. I've tried to do a little bit of both. So I literally got on the stream, was like, Grace, get up, go change.
Yeah, I was wearing a blue sweater.
Yeah, I was like, how could you?
But Grace was very adequate here. She said it was very like Glinda to Elphaba. Like, take off those glasses.
Yeah, that's right.
Take the hair out of the braids.
It's actually
We'll
go
make you
race.
Elphaba.
How dare you?
Go race.
Go race.
Go race. Go race.
That's great. But no, but let's not get away from who is each of us in the Awesome Foursome, because my Scarecrow.
Oh, I mean, I'm gonna absolutely be the straw man argument here and say I'm the Scarecrow.
Okay, and then Mari wants to be the lion. I'm very cowardly, but and I'm pretty cat-like. I might fight you for lion.
I'll be Dorothy. So sorry.
No, but I think I could be Dorothy.
And I don't have a heart.
As we all know, go race.
I think for me, like, whenever I'm outside my house, I'm trying to get back home. You know, like Dorothy is an introvert. That is not me. Back home, so that also resonates. So
you did drop a house on a woman, but we don't talk about that.
Yes, so many similarities. She's like obsessed with her dog. I have cats. I don't know if it's enough. I'm happy to go with it, but okay, I think we did it.
We did it. And we're talking about characters that again may not even come into prominence till the next part, because right now we're setting ourselves back in the past, and we are talking about Wicked, set as a prequel to the events
because the Wizard of Oz isn't the past.
Yeah, I mean the past and even further back from there, in a far-off land full of Technicolor. Though I did see there has been some discourse this week as to whether it was not Technicolor enough, but I'm sure cinematography is one of the many things we're going to get into over the course of this film. Now, what's really fun is that the four of us, I think, not necessarily representing the whole of all of these people that have seen this movie, but I think we all represent a lot of different backgrounds of types of people who have a certain type of background with the original product, not even through the form of the musical, but also the book it's loosely based on, and of course, The Wizard of Oz. And then, of course, we'll get into our thoughts going in. I mean, let's just start with some quick origin stories here. Shannon, what is your history with Wicked? Any pop culture contained in its orbit, and your mindset going into watching this movie in terms of expectations? Because this is to say it's been long in the tooth to have this thing come in would be an understatement.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a bit of imposter syndrome because I'm not like a Wicked super fan. I love theater, and I do love Wicked. Like, I do think Wicked's like a top 10 musical for me, but it's just like compared to like how much I love like Hamilton, right? Like, I haven't named my cats like Elphaba and Glinda. Basically, that's the comparison. But well, if I get two more, they would actually be really good cat names. I'm thinking about it. But I saw this show about 10 years ago. I saw it again last year. I've always loved at least the really big songs, and I think that the movie has made me love like many, many more of them. And yeah, seeing it last year, it resonated a lot for me. I do a mean Defying Gravity in the shower, and that's where I'm at with Wicked. Yeah.
Mari, what about you? What has been your experience and knowledge of Wicked prior to stepping into the theater?
Yeah, so like Shannon, I do like theater as well. But I never saw Wicked on theaters because about 10, I think 12, around 12 years ago, I read the book. I read Wicked the book, and I read Son of Wicked. And like, first off, those books, they're good, but they are heartbreaking. So if you are everybody who's like, tra la la, now I'm gonna go read the book, you're gonna be like, oh my God, because it is dark. It is dark. So I'm warning you guys now. So I got exposed to Wicked through that darkness. And so then when I was like, okay, should I go and see the musical now? And then somebody kind of like told me the synopsis of the musical. I was like, that's not like the book. And if anybody
Where's
has
the tiger sex?
where is the
That's why Mari's there for it. Yeah. I demand that.
So like if anybody who has listened to the We Know Scripted feeds knows that I am a book snob. I will read a book first and I will gripe about things not being like the book. So I was like, you know what? I'm cool. I'll just wait until the movie. I foolishly thought the movie would be coming sooner. It did not. I had to wait 12 years, but I'm here now. I love the movie. Like I said, I am a musical person. I just never saw this one. You know what I'm saying? Like I just never got around to seeing this one. And I can't wait I really want to talk about, because I really like talking about musical adaptations and how they're adapted. So I really want to talk about that aspect. Personally.
Absolutely. Grace, what was your background coming into the movie?
Yeah, so I'm not a huge. I'll say I was not a big like musical person in the sense of like going to see stage productions. I then did know that Wicked was coming out as a movie, and my mom and I went to go see Wicked, the stage musical, earlier this year. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh yeah, I think I get all of it. I think I understand the whole thing. And so now I'm like am desperate to like go see everything. I'm very fortunate. I live in Toronto that I can see a bunch of stuff. Like my mom and I are gonna go. The Lion King is playing here currently. I've watched Come From Away on like the version
Apple TV.
On Apple TV. Like I've watched the Hamilton version, but I've never watched it live. I'm going to New York next year and hoping to catch something, and still debating what I should go see.
Oh yeah, we'll chat offline. I've got a lot of recs for you.
Yeah. But Wicked, so it's like kind of the first that I went to go see, kind of like with this thing of like you know this, I just like need to watch and consume as much as I can, like voraciously. And so it was like, oh, the movie's coming out, I should go see it. Went to go see it, was just like, yeah, that's pretty incredible. And I feel like sort of opened this this thing for me of like, oh yeah, I should go try and watch more. That's a thing I should do with my time, which maybe I don't need another thing to do, but I now do want to do it. And yeah, and then I really liked the movie. I've seen it twice. Took my niece to go see it, which was a little risky because it's 2 hours 40 minutes.
Because of the tiger sex.
Because of the but she did stay awake the whole time. Went with my mom as well to go watch the movie, and it's such I really like it. I'm really excited to talk about it. So yeah. And then Mike, what about you?
Well, Grace, even though you claim that you do not have a heart, mine grew immensely upon hearing your newfound love for movie musicals. Because look, if anybody has checked out any iota of what I've done the past 10 years, or listen, you could probably even just make a blanket assumption by listening to me talk for 30 seconds. I am a theater kid. I was a professional actor up until about 10 years ago. I went to school for musical theater. And the time I really started getting into musical theater, Broadway, was around 2003 to 2004, which was right when this thing was hitting Broadway. And so, to Shannon's point, it came at a time where there wasn't a lot that I, as like a 14-year-old, could really consume in terms of voraciously diving into the oeuvre of decades of musical theater. So Wicked is one of those shows that I know so many lyrics to stuck in my gray matter, but I don't particularly love it. I think it's good. I think there are some very good songs. I really love Stephen Schwartz. We are a huge Stephen Schwartz household here. My wife's favorite musicals are Pippin and Godspell. I think he has some bangers. and then the ones that don't bang, they certainly do miss in a number of ways. So the hit or miss aspect is something that I've always kind of taken away from it from a visual perspective. And the spectacle laid in therein. I mean, I got to see this on Broadway in 2007. I saw it on the West End in, I think, 2008, I believe. And then I've seen another touring production of it as well. So again, for a show that like is not in my top tier, it's something I've seen a number of times. And I do gain certain appreciation for it every time I do walk away and maybe sometimes look past some of the more questionable lyrics. And I think the film absolutely blew me away. For someone who came in being like, not only with not being so incredibly high on the show, but also being like, to Mari's point, this is something that has been talked about for over a decade at this point. There's a lot of acclaim built into it. A lot of people like Wicked, even though I was Team Avenue Q back then during the 2004 Tony's Award controversy. Real ones know. I was still coming in with some lowered expectations as to how I thought this was going to do. And this has to be up there with some of the best musical theater adaptations I've ever seen on screen. John M. Chu, I'm going to be giving you a lot of flowers, my dude, because between this and In the Heights, this guy is what the genre needs nowadays to actually bring stuff to the screen. Unlike something like Mean Girls that came, in a year prior and taught you how to not produce and especially not market a musical.
Yeah, I came into the movie, I think, with three like conflicting things. The first being like, I really do like Wicked. So I guess like I came in primed to like it. The second being that I really like what John M. Chu did with In the Heights. Right. And that gave me the most faith because In the Heights is like a top 5 musical for me. I actually hadn't seen it until this year. So I saw the movie first. I've now subsequently seen the show, which I also love, but I think I even prefer the movie. Like 96,000 for In the Heights. If anyone hasn't seen that, it is on YouTube because I watch it a lot. Is to me like the best stage musical number that I can think of in movie adaptations. It's so good. So I had a lot of faith in him. My concern was like, why is this 2 hours and 40 minutes? Because the first half of Wicked is an hour and a half. And that feels like a lot of extra time to give this. And I was concerned about it. And then walking out of it, firstly, I loved it. I felt like what John M. Chu did was that like spectacle. It felt like theater. It felt like it was like pure theater, and the grandiosity was brilliant. And then from a time perspective, I was pleasantly surprised. I felt it was a little long, but I didn't feel it was an hour and 10 minutes too long. Like I thought that everything they added in from a plot perspective, like Fiyero and Elphaba meeting beforehand in the woods, like that, like, or even more about like Elphaba's childhood, was all great and like all felt relevant to the story. It didn't feel like it was like unnecessary padding, but while I enjoyed all of that and I enjoyed the whole movie, I was never bored, but I did feel like the one thing was like they never ever chose the more restrained option ever. Like they went 30 seconds over every single time. Like that felt a little bit like they were saying like screw Flanders, like a lot. So I felt like that like extra, Simpsons reference there, that like extra 30 seconds, that was where I felt the time. And I think that the best, I know this has been heavily debated, but the best example of that is like the final shot. I was like, is Ever going to bring me down? And she's in the air and like, cut to black for me. But no, then she's got to fly and they're on like, we get more shots of the same thing and there's an extra 30 seconds. And for me, that kind of shows the lack of restraint in the editing that made like, they chewed the scenery like 10% too much, but it was still better than I thought for me. Than an hour and 10 minutes extra that actually did fly by, much like Elphaba did a lot too long in the movie.
Yes. There's a lot there. I want to say I came into Wicked thinking I love musicals, and in particular movie musicals. Okay. So I did grow up watching stage plays, more on the black circuits. I remember my mom taking me to my first play when I was 8. And we're talking about here in DC at the Warner Theater, watching what would be a little known man named Tyler Perry's first play that did not involve Medea. You know what I'm saying? So like and I'm from DC. So for us, the Kennedy Center is where we see all of like the touring and stuff like that. So I've seen Legally Blonde, Book of Mormon, like everything that comes through here, I try and watch. But movies and TV have always resonated with me more, and because I love like I'm a visual person, and so when you add like musicals and music and audio to movies, it does heighten it for me. But I always like to see the movie adaptation of stuff. So coming into Wicked, I really wanted to see how they were going to do it because, like Mike said, we could have got an In the Heights, which I remember watching In the Heights and really liking it, hating a lot of the behind the scenes stuff that we heard about it, but realizing like it really grew on me. Like now I have a whole playlist of Broadway stuff, and In the Heights I never skip any of the In the Heights songs. And but getting In the Heights or a Chicago, which I've seen on Broadway and here at the Kennedy Center, I've seen it twice, like a Chicago movie where Chicago did it brilliantly, where they're going back from a movie standpoint to a stage
Right.
to the stage for musical numbers. Like I think Chicago is my favorite movie musical of all time.
So
I've said
good.
this on a podcast before, because of how it was adapted. And then, like Mike says, a Mean Girls or a Dear Evan Hansen. God, why did they do that abomination? Like the fact that it's like never something in the middle, with movie musicals. It's either amazing or it is the worst thing you've ever seen in your entire life. So I really wanted to see where Wicked was going to be on the pantheon of movie musicals. And Wicked, John M. Chu, featuring Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo, literally is up there. It might be the best movie musical of all time. And
Whoa.
I agree with Shannon that like it felt long. There were definitely scenes that felt longer than they should be, but I really thought that they did a good, like I couldn't imagine trying to fit the rest of that in the time frame, like this 2 hour and 40-minute time frame. I feel like I would have felt it was rushed. So I'm actually really glad. Like it doesn't.
That is good. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like a part two for a part two sake, for a money's sake. It really feels like a part two for us to let the story breathe and give it that big grandiousness.
Yeah.
So
That's
like
a very, very Aussie word, grandiose.
Well, having it as like
Grandiose.
having it as 2 parts,
Yeah.
I think I'm not debating that at all.
Yeah,
I
no,
just
no,
think
no.
that the first part could have been like 2 hours 10. But
Well, I think
Yes.
also,
Yeah.
listen, and this is like one of my only critiques of the movie. I adore Peter Dinklage. I think Peter Dinklage, go see Cyrano, a surprising movie musical that he was actually like pretty darn capable in. I mean, maybe we don't need to keep arguably the worst song in the show in the movie. Maybe we don't need to be that faithful to the adaptation to be like, I think true Wicked fans would be, incredibly in disarray if the Goat Man song did not necessarily go the way of the Dodo.
The Goat Man song is something bad? At least it is something bad. The Goat Man song itself. I'm sure that joke has been made a million times, Mike.
It's very self-describing. It's Stephen Schwartz knew what he was doing when he's like, you just wrote something bad at the top. They're like, I guess this is the name of the song.
Yeah.
TikTok does not hate that song the most, I will say.
Well, we asked the send out a lovely poll to the audience. We'll see what song our patrons
because it's like a meme of which one they hate the most.
Yeah, I do think the other thing about I think to the
I don't like it, to be fair, but they hated the most. They hated the second most.
To all the points that we're all making, which is that I think we all really, really liked it, and to the point of like the thing of throwing around like this might be the best movie musical ever. There's a few things I think that are happening right now, and the first is I want to say this point that I don't think invalidates what I'm going to say, which is I agree with that point. I think it also is a little bit of a weird movie year, and I think that there has been this thing, I feel like since Top Gun Maverick, there's been a little bit of like, I guess Barbie and Oppenheimer. So those are the three: Top Gun, Barbenheimer, and then this, that I feel like have been able to hit as much of that 4-quadrant thing as possible. And even not even 4-quadrant, because these are none of those are really like, except Barbie maybe is not even the most kid movie. And even Barbie has a little bit of the like, I'm questioning sometimes, is like if I would have taken my niece to Barbie just because of some of the jokes about like genitals and things like that. So, and this one I think
Yeah,
is
I mean, the final joke of Barbie. I don't know sure how much that conversation would have been with your
Spoilers.
niece.
That's right. So I feel like there's this like thing about like movies for me right now. Going to the movies is not going away ever. What it is going to be is much more of like a niche hobby that I think people do. I think you're going to see movie theaters like more than close down. You're going to see like the chains stay, and there'd be like, I'm even seeing now the movie theater near me, which mostly does not play. It basically plays whatever like the 3 to 4 most popular movies are, and then just plays as much of them as possible. Like you could just go see Wicked like 10 times, and like not really, because they all overlap, right? But I think that this is a little bit of, and then like I have to go somewhere else a little bit further to go see a movie that's like sort of like down the line, maybe like the 6th, 7th most popular movie that's out at that time. So I think that that's kind of what movies are going to be. And every once in a while, you're going to get a movie that does sort of reinvigorate that idea, like this thing that we've had for a long time, which is like movies as pop culture, and like really breaking through. And not every movie I think moving forward is going to do that, but every once in a while you're going to get that. I think it's interesting to look at the movies that do. I think that this movie is really good. There's a lot of stuff in this movie that doesn't work as well. Like there's multiple songs and I think casting choices that don't work. But I think the biggest for me, the buoying of this movie, why it's been so popular, is yes, the things that are good are like incredible and some of the best stuff we've seen on, but also thematically, I think it does feel really good at a time where like things kind of suck in the real world and have for like the last few years. To have a movie that is like, I know it's dark, but it's also like, hey, don't judge people by like, literally this is like, don't judge someone by
the color of their skin,
you know. And then that last one, I was talking to my niece about like, I was like, do you understand like what she's saying when she's like defying gravity? She's like, nope, don't understand at all. And so we started talking about it, and I was like, she is basically saying like all those people were making fun of her, she's not going to let them like weigh her down. She's going to like overcome that. And she was like, oh, that's really cool. I was like, yeah, it is really cool. And I think there is just something that like the movie makes you feel as like powerful as you get in a time where like outside the movie theater kind of sucks. So I think that like, I don't think it means like this isn't like the greatest movie ever, but I think it's like extra heightened by like the time we're in, that like going to the movies and getting this feeling is rarer and rarer. And at the time where we all get to do it together. You know?
Yes, that's the thing. It feels like it's being marketed as like kind of an experience of like I have not encountered many people that are like, yeah, I'll just wait for it to go to streaming. And maybe that's also because of like,
that would be a big mistake.
Yeah, but kind of also the theatrical element as well of like you're all in the audience experiencing this together. Now, I don't know if I'm speaking on behalf of all of us. I luckily have not had any singing incidents happen in the theater where I went to go see it.
After the musical numbers, but I think that was okay, right?
You what?
No, after all of them?
People were clapping.
All...
I think I was leading it, but people clapped after. I mean, after you're not gonna be like, wow, like what? Like, come on. I think that was fine. People didn't seem annoyed. People were also clapping. It was, and there wasn't a lot of people there, so I think it was.
I'm imagining she's in a room of 8 people as she like starts a standing ovation, just looking around.
I didn't sing, but you know how hard it is not to sing.
Yeah, it's hard not to sing.
And I didn't sing.
Yeah, luckily nobody sang. Everybody clapped at the very end, so it was very
we clapped
good.
At the end. We clapped after the musical numbers because someone was leading it. Anyway,
even something bad.
Not after that. You know the ones we clapped after. I think it's pretty.
Yeah, but we clapped sarcastically after something.
Yeah. Again, people don't hate that song the most, but okay.
I know. We'll get into it.
So many thoughts. Thematically, I think that as well, having the themes be like sometimes the good thing to do isn't the majority or the popular thing.
Right.
I know has like resonated for me in different ways, and I think that's like the major theme of the musical, and I think that's relevant from like a theater perspective or from a movie perspective. I do think that other than those themes, which are important, the most powerful thing for me has been accessibility. The accessibility of theater. And yeah, as someone who loves going to the movies and as someone who loves musical theater, I think the movie is so important. I think Ariana Grande was great, but I also think one of the most important things about casting her was that this is not a musical for musical fans. I went opening night with friends who are on the spectrum of, you know, like have seen and like Wicked to wait, what happens in Wizard of Oz? And would they all have been there night one without like the moment in pop culture time that this is? No. And would that exist without Ariana Grande, who's like a, you know, massive star in the world leading it? Probably not. And I think that the like moment in time that it's been from a pop culture perspective is super important because for me, Like, as an Australian, I'm 30 hours away from the West End or Broadway.
I mean,
And
you're
for me,
in Oz in a very different way.
exactly, and that's why it's good that I'm here. I am the Wizard of Oz. Anyway, when I was young, the way that I started loving musicals was through movies, like, because again, like, that was my closest, accessibility to it. When I was a kid, my grandma showed me Joseph. That was my main one. And then in 2007 in high school, the Hairspray musical for me is like a moment in time for me. That was probably the first Broadway soundtrack I knew every word of, the first movie musical soundtrack. And I still love that movie so, so much. And that opened up like a whole world for me of musical theater. And I feel like what's so important about Wicked is that I feel like, and Grace perfectly proves the point. People will go and see it and be like, oh, I love this. And then check out other movies and then go to shows. Right. I have friends who are like, oh, I love that. I should have seen it when it was here a year ago. Yeah. I'm like, yeah, it was here for ages. And the marketing I thought was pretty good. But I think what it does so well is it like reaches out beyond the musical theater fans and makes it super accessible while still giving the nods and the cameos for the diehards. And I think it fuses that really well. So basically on the spectrum of movie musicals, between like what we're saying is the bottom ranked of like Bomb So Hard, it closes West End and Broadway, which is Dear Evan Hansen, which I get because I saw Dear Evan Hansen recently, and based on the movie reviews, I almost did it. So I get it. I'm one of those people, and it was good. I don't know how the movie bombed so hard.
Yeah, the music is good.
The movie. Did you see the movie? You didn't.
No, I refused because
I was going to say the play
West End and Broadway. It closed both, and then it's like, what's the highest? I don't know. The Wicked is the highest, but is it the most important in terms of theater and getting people to love theater? Like, yeah, I think we can say that as its moment in pop cultural time. So.
Well, what I think is so interesting about the casting, and Grace, maybe we'll touch back later about how I'm intrigued about that open-ended answer you said about how you felt maybe some weren't warranted, but it's this idea as well for me, again, as a self-admitted elitist when it comes to this stuff. Another reason why I have some problems with movie musicals are the casting choices, where usually they will go with the names and they maybe go with singing ability second. And again, I am used to that Broadway tone and heavy vibrato, even though that's changed a little bit nowadays in the scene. And so it's interesting that John M. Chu, I believe, had said it in one of the many interviews he's done in all of the stuff around this, that he initially was going to go for some like relatively unknown names, or at least like non-A-listers, because again, to Mari's point, this has been something that's been in the works for over a decade. There have been innumerable wish lists from people of like, I remember, again, to show how far back this was going, I can recall as clear as day all of the Anne Hathaway should play Glinda stuff that was out there. That's like how long ago this stuff has been talked about. Oof. And so it is interesting that, they do end up going for, I would say, Jonathan Bailey obviously has some credits to his name, has some notoriety. Cynthia Erivo, yes, largely known for Broadway, but has been in a couple of things. But they're not afraid to bring in somebody like an Ariana Grande. But I to speak more broadly about her performance, I certainly did not get the sense watching her that it was like, oh, you're a pop star who's trying to do musical theater. I mean, for those that don't know, Ariana Grande started out doing off-Broadway and Broadway shows. So she has that capacity. She can dance her ass off. She can sing these high operatic notes that Glinda can. And so that's something that really heartened me to this as well is, again, we all come in from different perspectives, but from my, snobbery, I was able to finally tilt my head down and be like, oh, look at these people can sing. Fantastic. This surprises me greatly.
Yeah, well, for me, yeah. I'm sorry, Grace.
No, you're good. You go ahead.
As soon as I watched the movie, I consumed as many interviews as possible. I watched the behind the curtain stuff and all of that. So, they said that they did those auditions like 5 times, 8 times. Like I truly think, at least from what they told us, I think John M. Chu, he said that they auditioned thousands of people for Elphaba and Glinda.
Do you think they heard me in my shower, or do you think that I should have like gone to a specific call? Or...
I think if they heard you in your shower, you have a bigger problem than not getting cast for Wicked.
Is that not where the casting calls are happening, in my shower? That's so unfortunate. Worked really hard on that.
So for me, Wicked as a draw, like I forgot until Shannon kind of said, I was like, oh, people were going just to see Ariana Grande. Like it's kind of like in wrestling. It's like, is the wrestler the draw or is the company the draw? And to me, Wicked was the draw. But now I think about it, I get it how you can say like, okay, we auditioned a whole bunch of people, but then we went with Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo, to one really big name in the pop star and one relatively known uh Broadway actor. But I don't want it to be felt as if they only got it because of those names, because they worked their asses off and they did the old Tom Hopper of it all and sang live on set.
which I was a little like, I feel a certain way about that between Les Mis. Like I like the
I love
rawness
Les
of it to a
Mis.
certain extent, but again, there's a big snobby part of me that's like, I also want clean vocals
I
and on
was
pitch.
I was
were
referencing
on
Cats,
it.
Mike, the other great.
Yeah, where's that on the spectrum of where we're at?
Yeah.
I went to go see Cats by myself in a theater on Christmas Day, and I had the time of my life. I had
It
so
is
much
You
fun
the
with
clapping?
that.
best.
Were you
Oh,
It
yeah.
singing?
is
I was singing,
And
oh,
singing.
the best
Okay, now
ever,
it's okay to do
ever."
that. Now it's fine to be clapping and singing.
I mean, they
and
say
Oh.
dance and nobody's watching, and
Yeah.
nobody was watching
Can-
at that
It
time.
was so,
Can I
oh
just say,
my God.
I do think with Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo, I think like to start with Ariana Grande, I think that they found like this I don't know if lucky is the right word, but like she is an incredible singer and she's also one of the most famous people on the planet.
Exactly.
And so
Like,
it's just
lucky.
like there are not that many people who are that thing and then can play her. And like for both of them, I think that there was a little bit of different reasons why I think people, from my understanding as an outsider, of why people were nervous. I think Ariana Grande, there's a reputation to her being famous, this a little bit of like, oh, she's just getting it. There's some of the reasons I think now she's proven them wrong. In the poll that we conducted, these are the two obvious, like they're exactly tied for who's the best performer.
well,
I think
that's
it's like
nice.
so funny that's how it worked out, because it's exactly how I feel. Like on any given day,
Exactly.
I would say one of them is better than the other. Ariana Grande is a perfect Glinda, and actually my niece was most excited to go see this because Ariana Grande was in it and she watches her on in some show on whatever channel, whatever.
Victorious, probably.
Yes.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, Jimmy
the other
Fallon.
one though is Cynthia Erivo, who like, we say like she's not that, but like she's won a Tony. She's like it's like
She has.
she has.
And after watching
Yeah.
this movie, I will just give a quick plug. If you have not seen her Tony performance, or maybe a bootleg of her "I'm Here" from when she was in The Color Purple, like
Mm-hmm.
go see it. It is transcendent, and you understand then
On YouTube
immediately
somewhere.
why she got cast in this role.
And I'm wondering, Mari, like I want to throw this to you mostly in the sense that there was some controversy. She got in a little bit of hot water for a poster that went viral. It was they remade the poster in the style of the play
book.
of the
the
Broadway play, yeah,
Sorry,
with the
the
whispering.
Broadway
Broadway
play. You're right.
play.
I'm sorry.
And Cynthia Erivo says like, no, I purposely like chose to look down the camera and I did this. But
Right,
Yes.
just to limit, it's that specifically, like they did remake it, but then other people basically brought down the brim of the hat to cover her eyes, which is the way the original poster was made.
And the way I read this one is that it's both kind of a ridiculous thing, but I think also that to me feels like straw that broke the camel's back in terms of the way in which the story is. And Idina Menzel is one of also the greatest vocalists of all time. And like, we'll talk about Idina Menzel and Kristen Chenoweth, but in terms of like a choice to play, I feel like Cynthia Erivo is ultimately like such a great choice for many other reasons that don't include she's incredible in the movie and she's incredible as a performer. But there is the other reason to this that I think makes a lot of sense, that it feels like that moment that happened was such a like culmination of her being like, can you please stop please stop critiquing the choice of me being cast in this role.
Cynthia Erivo she's a black woman, right? She's a black British woman. And Cynthia Erivo has very mixed, she gets a lot of mixed receptions. She has for years now, especially from the black community as well. It's one of the reasons why some of my friends she's one of the reasons why some of my friends won't go and see Wicked, only because like a few years ago, she made some comments about Black Americans that still to this day is like, it's not okay to me, especially because she was playing like Harriet Tubman, and it's a lot. I'm not about to sit here and explain the diaspora wars on a Wicked podcast, but she is very polarizing, because mostly because she is very sensitive about her craft, and I don't mean that in a bad way. Like
Right.
a lot of artists are very sensitive about their craft, and she just a lot of times happens to just put her foot in her mouth on stuff. But I also backed her up on this Wicked poster thing here too, because as a Black woman, like constantly getting your narrative and what you're trying to present erased it's annoying. And like Grace said, it was probably the 20th thing she had to deal with that day. And to us, we're like, whoa, chill. But to her, it's like, no, enough is enough. And I put my feelings about her aside to see this movie, because I think she does a fabulous job of melting into the character.
Ah.
Well, that's a choice of
Yeah.
words. Yeah.
Oh shit. Yes, I thought she did a very good job of really encapsulating Alphaba, Jesus. And
Oh, Elphaba. That sounds like
I
the name for
know,
her when she gets
You come
made
from the
over.
book.
It's
That's like,
it's my
people thought it was
note. Yeah,
Yeah,
Hermione.
right,
So
yeah,
that's how you read it. Yeah.
Oh, it's not Elphaba.
yeah. So yeah, right. Exactly. But yeah, so like I also just want to get the powerfulness of Elphaba being portrayed as a Black woman in this movie, with all of the undertones of discrimination and being judged by the color of your skin. It's just so like recent, like for me, seeing a Black woman portrayed in this type of role, and then seeing how she's treated, seeing how she's turned into the villain, it's one of those things. It's like it just hits home, for a lot of people. and
And there's no place like
and
home.
yeah, and for many reasons, it's one of those movies that hit home for anybody who has felt like they were, ostracized for anything. But for me, for us, and from my perspective, it's gonna hit one way, just like it might hit a different way for other people. So, Cynthia Erivo, a very polarizing character, but the one thing that is not polarizing is her talent.
Yeah.
She is so freaking talented. Her voice is,
Butter.
yes, smooth
Like it
like
melts.
butter. It
It
is
melts.
so amazing. Like I love her tone. I love how rich her tone is, how shaky her vibrato can get. Like I actually really liked it. So, and I love now the battle cry is just forever changed to
Yeah.
me. It's kind of really hard for me to go back to the original, because everybody's gonna have their own battle. They're each gonna like whichever battle cry they like the most. But this one really like kind of changed the game. So I say all that to say it just feels like a film that's bigger. We talked about it. It's just this shifts the pop culture zeitgeist. It truly does. It feels like that.
Can I say
Yeah.
what surprised me so much was that actually my favorite song that Cynthia Erivo performed in this movie was "I'm Not That Girl."
Yes.
And maybe it's because, again, it's such low expectations for me. And not to mention, to your point, Shannon, something this film is able to benefit from is, I think, really filling in that story. And in a musical where you're just trying to get from set piece to set piece and song to song, there's a lot of stuff that gets truncated along the way. And it's suspension of disbelief in many ways. You're supposed to just kind of like go along with it and be like, yeah, there's something developing here. I do think that, as was mentioned before, the Elphaba Fiyero dynamic was something, and listen, we'll get into Jonathan Bailey in so many ways. But I think that, what they were able to develop between the two of them, I felt it. And maybe it's also the way that Cynthia was able to turn a lot from that song. Again, I think when you talk about a lot of Elphaba's big numbers, we know about The Wizard and I, we know Defying Gravity. There's one in the second act. That's another big one as well. But I'm Not That Girl's a very different one, right? It's more sullen. It's softer. And it's also, I think, true to Elphaba's nature, more inwardly focused. And I think she did a great job. Then she had some fantastic runs in there as well.
Yeah.
So it was almost like, for me, everything else she met and hit out of the park. And then there was like this nice little chestnut in the middle of the movie where I'm like, oh yeah, you actually made this song that I was mad with a very enjoyable time.
It's like an R&B song. They turned into like
Mm.
a 90s R&B song. I loved it.
I think, in terms of Cynthia and Glinda, like to cast like a woman of color as Elphaba, like I do understand, and like how I relate to Elphaba is like for sure as like a weirder person.
You're also from Oz.
Yeah, exactly. As a woman, obviously, like, you know, they're burning all the witches, even if you aren't one. Like, I do want, like, the demonization that women can have. And I know that Idina Menzel was always about, like, she relates to it as a Jewish woman. And, like, as a Jewish woman, I get it. But I don't think you can compare that to a woman of color playing Alphaba in a show that is literally about being alienated for your skin color. Like, that is what it's about. And I think that was the most powerful choice they could have made. And I feel like for, you know, because you compare, like, Ariana and Cynthia, Ariana, I think, was great. I think, like, it's not just that she's a really good singer. She loves Wicked. I watched her sing The Wizard and I at, like, the 15-year anniversary.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
Like, there's been so much Ariana Wicked stuff. Like, she probably has cats named Alphaba and Glinda. Like, if anyone does, she's a stan. And I think that her interpretation is a great interpretation of Glinda.
Amazing.
I think she does some of her own stuff really well. Like, you know, I think there's been a lot of talk about how in No One Warns the Wicked, she seems more in mourning, like, it again, because you can see it more in a movie. You get those subtleties of her pain, which she does really well. I think that relates really well to the themes of, like, you know, the wicked die alone. She's thinking she's wicked and she's gonna die alone and she's actually the bad one. I think those subtleties are excellent. And it does differentiate, and I think is excellent. But Cynthia at large, I think, like, really unlocked a completely new version of the character for me that I didn't know existed. You know, it's like Idina Menzel has the standard, and which is amazing, and I didn't know it could go up a level, and it did for me with Cynthia. And I think the song for me that best represents that I love so much in the musical and in the soundtrack is The Wizard and I. I love her version of that because I love that song anyway, but I feel like she does such a good version of, like, the Wanting song, you know, like, I want to venture in the great wide somewhere. I
want to be where the people are.
Yeah, I mean, and how far I'll go, all of that. All
movie.
Wanting songs. And, like, actually, like, where she is in the field, it kind of reminded me of I Want to Venture in the Great Wide Somewhere, the reprise of.
Yeah, but except, like, the post-apocalyptic version, because it's so arid and dry.
Well, yeah, because it's a desert. But yeah, I think she does that so well, and I really, really love that song. And I was looking into, like, what she does with that. And this is getting into some of the kind of orchestration and the score, which I think is superb, and we'll talk about that. But, like, in the score, during the Unlimited part, they put in the score of, like, Somewhere Over the Rainbow. And it's like, this is my cool musical fact that many people probably know about Wicked, but the Unlimited motif is Somewhere Over the Rainbow, right? Right?
It's literally the same notes, and it's just set to a different rhythm.
Like, it's the same 7 notes. Unlimited.
We all knew that, Shannon. All of us who are on this podcast knew that they were the same notes with the same.
Yeah.
I'll give it to you.
I didn't know.
It's really, really hard to it's hard to pass out because it's complete, and it goes to such a different place, and it's structured so differently, and it's over a suspended chord rather than this kind of, like, major progression. Like, there's a lot of ways it's different, but it's so cool. And it made me realize, I'm like, but you know what's, like, the ultimate Wanting song? Somewhere Over the Rainbow, right? Like, and that song means so much to me. And right now I feel like I'm in a lot of, like, the Wanting songs, because I feel like I, like, you know, I'm, like, wanting my life to be different. That's what the Wanting songs are. And I feel like this was such a perfect version of that in what they did and what Cynthia did. It's, like, by far my favorite version of that song, and I'm obsessed. So that to me was, like, a highlight still. But I'm glad, yeah, we get it, right?
Well, yeah. What I find so interesting about, and The Wizard of I was the first time I really focused on it, was, again, the difficulty that can come in a movie adaptation of a musical is that musical theater, there's sometimes choreography and spectacle and stagecraft involved, but by and large, it is one person planting their feet, spotlight on them, and you are focusing on the vocals and the words that they are singing, for better or for worse. Movies, you can't really do that. Again, maybe the Tom Hooper stuff is kind of like a deviation from the norm there for many reasons, because they really did do the intense close-ups and, you know, focusing on everything that someone is saying. And so in The Wizard and I, for instance, like, she's skipping stones, she's twirling little Jackson Pollock modern art sculptures around, and it's like, part of me is a little bit, and I felt that as well. With
that was so good. It degrenified her.
It did. I love that part.
So that was a good example, because sometimes I do feel like, and maybe it's a little bit of the ADHD in me of being like, I can't really concentrate on what she's saying because there's so much other stuff going on. But also at other points when I feel like maybe the lyrics are not necessarily helping make up for the melody, then it's okay to do it. But it's also a tough thing to do from a cinematography perspective as well, because you can't really hold on that person and just have them sing like you would in a musical. You could, but it would be quite static. And so to the point that has been made earlier, you know, they really go all out with obviously the visuals, obviously with the choreography, which we'll really get into, one of my highlights in general of the film. But even something like The Wizard and I, which is a quite literal standalone piece, they still are throwing in a lot of things for her to do, a lot of places for her to go, because they do want to show the grandiosity, if that is a word, of the environment that's around them.
And they end at on the edge of the cliff there. That's the last time where she gets to like belt out.
Very how far I'll go.
Yeah. No, it's great. I mean, yeah. The choreography, it's for me, and someone said it in the poll. I think it's Ryan Stanley who wrote the "Dear Glinda, you're just too good" part. It's just like of the choreography. It's just the one.
They put in this. Like,
that's been my algorithm across all social media. Has been.
I love it.
Is that it's the beginning of that song? It is now. It's also the end of that song, because the choreographer has basically Christopher Scott, who I want to shout out because he also worked on In the Heights. Like, far and away presents some of the best choreography I've seen from an adaptation of the genre. But like, he has put all these demos on social media, and now people are following along. I know they also put Dancing Through Life through there. Hopefully no one has like strapped themselves down to wheels to spin around, but they've tried to do all the other stuff in there as well. Like, it's just so kinetic as well. And like, again, I talk about all this stuff with all the things they're trying from a cinematography perspective, but also during the musical numbers, there are some points where it's just like a static wide shot of all of them dancing, even during No One Mourns the Wicked, which is not a dancey song usually.
Yes.
And so to have like all these munchkins kicking and stomping and dancing around in ecstasy, like, sometimes that's all you need to do. And they knew how to sometimes just hang on a big shot of a bunch of people dancing. And again, as a musical theater person, that's catnip to me. It may seem a little same for some people, but I ate up every single downbeat that these people were dancing their hearts out on screen.
The stomping and no one mourns the wicked gets me every time. Like, that is such. After I watched the movie, I refuse to say skeeted out. That no one mourns the wicked has to be one of the best like opening musical numbers of all time. Like.
Can I say that I think maybe like just hitting on something that we're talking about, these like the choreography numbers, I do feel like there's a few of them, these musicals in the last few years, that I feel like maintains this like musical thing. And I know like this sounds silly, but one of the questions I did ask, like, did people know this was a musical going into it? Because that has been such a theme.
So, although I will say, someone I know did walk out because they said there was too much music.
Well, but like, you know, the Mean Girls.
I'm like, it's accessible, but I guess there's like this very minimal barrier for entry.
But like, if you know The Wizard of Oz, there's music there too.
But Grace is right.
Mean Girls and The Color Purple and Wonka were the three where they hid that it was a musical. Like, Peter loved Wonka. I've spoken about it on the podcast before, but they sang the first note and Peter turned to me. He's like, "Is this a musical?" I'm like, "Clearly they are singing." But like, and he was on board with it. But like, if you don't know Wicked is a musical, then you deserve not to enjoy it. I'm sorry.
What if you just told him no? How do you think he would have reacted?
I'm like,
just really gaslight him.
Like, yes. I mean, I don't think they would have been singing if it wasn't. Anyway,
so my best friend said the same thing to me in Les Mis. Like, she knew it was a musical, but she didn't know it was like a musical. And
my dad, I remember still now asking my dad what he thought about the Les Mis movie, and he said he didn't like the parts with the singing, and I was like, that is a sung through a musical.
Well, I think sometimes we have to admit that even though that there are people in the world who do not realize and do not see any advertising, much like
it's Wicked.
Sometimes we're in a bubble. But there are people out there who just live in their world who don't see this stuff. So
they're in a bubble if they don't know the Wicked is a musical. Like, come on, it's Wicked.
I know. So only one person out of the 93 people who submitted the poll said that they did not know it was a musical.
Okay, well, I'm really sorry to that person.
Well, I'm even wondering whether they misread the question. So everybody knew it was a musical. But there has been this trend of things. And I think that like more than that, I think there's just I feel like that does extend into the movie musical itself, where there's this like hesitancy to take what works about musicals, why people love them, but like, you know, figure out how to make them work in the medium of a movie. Like,
I mean, you could say shame. It's shame, I think. No, we don't want this to be a musical, but we're gonna try.
And I honestly think that sometimes they overthink it. I've seen two, I think it's in both Mean Girls and in Dear Evan Hansen, where there is like a montage that's basically done as like a social media music number montage. And you're just like, I don't know. I think what I want to see is like people dancing well and people all dancing, and it makes you feel like I want to be a part of it. Like I want to come and sit here and enjoy it. And you do want to sing, but you don't sing. You can clap maybe. That I feel like the musicals that have like for me the few that I'm thinking of are In the Heights. Also, I really liked Steven Spielberg's West Side Story. There's been a few that I feel like do the thing of what a musical number can feel like when you're like watching it when you're sitting in the theater, translate it into a way in which it feels really invigorating and exciting to watch when you're watching it in a movie. And I feel like it's like paying homage to it, but it's not. It's just doing what the medium is effective at doing. So
yeah. I mean, yeah, and I think like In the Heights, Tick Tick Boom, like some of those were my favorite, but I just think that this has been such a moment in time, and I do think like it's for what Ariana Grande brings. Like if I think back to like put myself in 14-year-old me's headspace, like I probably was like, oh my god, Zac Efron, like when Hairspray did that, and that was great. Like that was such a good entry point. Like, and she's so good. Like I think that makes so much sense. But I think as well in the moment in time, like we've talked a little bit about it, like the memification of the movie, right? Like I've never seen so many memes about something. It's on. I don't know if is it my algorithm that every single platform that I am on is a different version of like Wicked content.
No, I think you put on the hold the space for.
Just say, is this what we so this is the time officially when we're holding space for the talk about Wicked memes, right?
Space. Well, I like that happened when I was asleep.
Like, let me hold your one finger. Hold on.
Yeah, can we do that? And I woke up and I was like, all I saw was holding space memes. I'm like, and now I have to work backwards to work out where we're at. And it was just like. It was just like being assaulted by the whole.
It happened so fast, Shannon. That happened so fast.
It happened so fast. I'm telling you, I didn't sleep for long. I was like, how long was I asleep for? Because now everyone's talking in holding space language, which didn't exist when I went.
Imagine how fast it moved for us who work in queer media.
But okay, you're like that moment of Miss Hoover. Like I didn't realize we could do that.
I think that there's okay, I actually have thoughts about this because like in terms of the criticism of like Cynthia Erivo with the poster or like criticisms of that, like the issue is being that like Ariana and Cynthia being like I think very self-important, right? And I have thoughts about that. Firstly, a lot of the themes of this movie are important. Secondly, it is also Wizard of Oz fanfic. So like also give a little bit of grace to that and like understand that it's that. But also there are going to be criticisms of Wicked because it's a musical, because they're singing, because it's pink and green, because it's thought of as like feminine that are going to dismiss it or diminish it, that are wrong. And they're right to fight out against that. But then also it is Wizard of Oz fanfic that has these like weird little elements more in the second act, which we can talk about, that like maybe we should like kind of all be able to laugh at as well. And the extreme self-importance is what I think people have kind of taken issue with, but like it's only added to the cultural phenomenon. And like so in terms of like what's the worst song, there are TikToks about like people like ranking the songs or like something that I keep seeing.
I think I saw like the thing I'll hit you with if you say this is your least favorite song.
People really hate It's Sentimental Man that like I won't.
That's so, and maybe it's just because I've lived on decades of Jeff Goldblum riz, but like I thought it was fine.
People were like, get to Defying Gravity. What are we still doing here?
Sentimental Man was the most voted worst song by more than half of the audience.
CGI Goat sang a song, and they're like, Jeff Goldblum for 30 seconds.
You didn't like that the best?
I do like it.
Oh, you do like it? Okay. So
yeah, not as my least. Like Sentimental Man is the least for me.
Have you ever chosen to listen to it?
One Short Day is the least for me.
Oh,
and you can't say that on the movie because One Short Day is like the fan service cameos.
Yeah, but Mari doesn't know. She didn't see the musical.
Right. Okay, well, like just as like the lore of like Idina Menzel and Kristen Chenoweth coming out, I did gasp.
I saw
like,
that.
It was a Marvel movie, but I also feel like that was the song I kind of missed because I wasn't expecting it. I felt like I was keyed in the whole time. I was clapping, I was watching, but then when they came out, I was like, oh my god! And then I was like, are my friends realizing what's going on? And then my sweet friend who I love so much next to me, who has a 3-year-old daughter, was like, that is Elsa. And I'm like, yes, and and also similar characters. But I feel like I've missed so much of that song. I feel like I need to see it again because
I will say Mari, maybe don't look up some of the visuals from that song because there's some like Eldritch horror stuff in there.
Because like All right, I haven't seen the musical, but I don't live under a rock. Like Defying Gravity and Popular were a part of like culture for.
Yeah,
So I've seen
literally
Idina
pop culture.
Menzel and Kristen Chenoweth do Defying Gravity. Like I watch the Tony Awards. Like I will just sit and watch the Tony Award performances. So like I knew that part or whatever. I just like something about One Short Day. I just don't like. I don't know. And I like Something Bad because it's like a horror story. And I like Peter Dinklage's voice. So.
It did feel like in this version in particular, and I understand why they did take a little recitati. They did take a little detour from like, hey, it's so much fun to be in the Emerald City. All right, everybody, who wants a lore dump 2 hours into this movie?
This is my pieces that I do think this movie, the stuff that works is exceptional, and I would agree some of the greatest movie musical stuff ever. The stuff that doesn't work, like it's shocking that this movie works in spite of it. So I do think Sentimental Man is actually not my least. Something Bad is definitely my least favorite song, but I do think Peter Dinklage is probably the best singer out of the three people who are like not singers who got cast in this movie, which is Michelle Yeoh, Peter Dinklage, and Jeff Goldblum.
I think, but then isn't the postscript on Michelle Yeoh's Oscar be like, you can get cast in a movie musical despite the fact you're not a great singer? Like that's your one free pass, right?
Good for her. It's great, but like it's not like the beginning of The Wizard and I, which I really love. I'm like, fast forward.
I almost wanted to skip it. I literally, and then I'm like, no, it's fine. It's fine. We can get.
Well, especially because there's been some stuff going on social media that Shirley Ralph from, of course, Abbott Elementary played Madame Morrible, and so there's some footage of her, and she is so outrageous, and she actually was in the running, I believe. She was in the auditions to be it. So I think, but I do think Michelle Yeoh serves the role that they want her to be in this, right? Which is like very stern teacher who like she rips off the mask and goes full of it, and then you're like, I actually probably should have relieved that the entire time, because like you're always holding people at arm's length and are a tad discriminatory towards others.
But wait, Grace.
Yes.
What are the issues you had? Listen.
Yes.
What are the issues I had in terms of oh my okay, this is my hottest take because I think people disagree with me.
Excited.
I don't think Dancing Through Life is actually that good. I think it's fine. I think it's fine. And it's also so long. Where does that end? Does it end at the Ozdust thing?
It does.
It doesn't. No, it's actually in the soundtrack. It goes through it.
Oh,
it goes through the whole thing.
It's a 9-minute song on the soundtrack.
It's a 9-minute song, yeah.
Like I've never really liked that song, and it has been in my head for 3 weeks to the point where it's
only one line I like.
It's so good.
No, it's
like
I mean, well,
they're like when he goes right on down to the. You can't not love that.
And I love Jonathan Bailey. No, I don't love it. I don't love it. I love Jonathan Bailey. Love him from Fellow Travelers. He's in the latest season of Heartstopper. He is tremendous. I think he's a great singer. I just don't think the song is the.
I do not like the
song.
I think he does the most with the song, and I think
I like the character stuff.
It's small dramaturgical choices they make though too. Like what's interesting is in the musical version, he's the one that's like, "What's the most swankified place in town?" She says, "That's the Ozdust Ballroom." So different from in the movie when he's like, "Oh, let's go to this place." And it makes sense that it's like CAD perennial dropout would be like, "Oh, I know this, not so seedy club where a flying squirrel plays the drums. We got to go there." I don't know. I've always had a soft spot in my heart for it because, like, as one of those pop rock tenors that auditioned for an inimitable number of musicals in the 2010s, like that was part of my repertoire.
Oh my God, do it right now.
No, never.
And I like the theme of it. I like the theme of it. I like this.
Were you just unhappy with the desecration of books, Grace? Was it that you're like, stop breaking all those books? It's a library. They're not yours.
It's one of those things, right? Because again, I'm trying to keep my perspective chill, but I'm like, must be nice to just dance through life. The privilege you have there, sir. To just have no carefree worries, and all that.
But what do you think Elphaba immediately nopes out of there? Like, I'm not going to dance and stomp around with this white boy. Like,
but he's empty. Like, that's the point. It's like by dancing through life he's completely empty, and then he finds meaning by didn't see that one. Just like not dancing through life and actually finding something to like invest in and care about. So
hold on. I just very quickly, I am wrong. It is the third most popular song according to
the third most popular.
Because it's not that good a song, but that they. It made
and the choreography is a lot of fun. I mean, come on, those wheels that apparently they spent like 2 weeks on. Like,
wait. Defying Gravity popular than Dancing Through Life? That was the order?
Not popular
No.
is way down there.
That's why I said that should not be the third.
What's
Exactly.
second? Wizard and I?
All right. The
It's-
first
it's-
is, of course,
what's the
Defying
second?
Gravity.
What is
The
it?
second, do we want to guess what second is?
The Wizard
I
and
would
What is this
imagine it's the wizard and no, it's what is this feeling?
Oh, what is this feeling?
It is
Because that
what
went-
is this
that
feeling?
went
The
viral.
other, the viral that I'm hearing is did they have brain? Don't make me laugh is the thing, and then
Don't
when she
make
says
me
right,
laugh.
that's going viral for me.
Oh, and there's also another
Oh.
moment that's gone viral, part of Dancing Through Life's 9-minute exodus. The actress's delivery of Bach.
Yeah, yeah.
Bach.
Yeah.
Yes.
Bach.
Which is my favorite part of of that song. And they're going to change it. Yes, that is my favorite part of that song. I
They're
like all
re-recording
of the
it. They're
character
re-recording it.
parts.
They're re-recording it. Yeah.
I
Yeah,
like
okay,
the
I heard that, but I
character
couldn't
part.
believe
I
it
like
was
the
true. They're
character part.
re-recording it for real.
They
Bach.
are
Bro,
really
they're
good.
McClunky
Yeah,
Bach right now. What the hell?
All
No,
right,
you
I
keep
love
Bach
that
in
part.
there.
All right, Defying Gravity, What Is This Feeling? Then Dancing Through Life, then The Wizard and I, then No One Mourns the Wicked, then Popular.
Oh my god,
Here's
that's
the
actually
thing,
really shocking.
Shannon. I think the thing is that like
I don't
people-
disagree, but I'm
if
shocked.
we did ranked voting, I think this looks different. But because it's like everybody votes
yeah.
for Defying Gravity, and then you have like
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, as an
Right?
Australian, our elections are ranked voting, and you should have done that.
I know.
That
For
is
many
that is
reasons,
a lot
yeah.
better way of getting where you want to be.
I
but-
will say though, it's tough to malign Dance of the Life because it technically does include, in my opinion, one of the best sequences in the entire show, which
Probably
is
the best, yeah.
the dance / Glinda and Elphaba finally becoming friends. Like
So
The silent dance, the silent dance.
The
part of
silent
dance, that's it.
right, the silent dance
Okay,
is a part
okay,
of that.
you guys. Okay, I'm gonna. Okay,
Nah,
the dance.
No.
in the movie, it's so much bigger, and I cried, and I clapped, but
Yeah.
I almost sang, but I didn't sing. Okay, I did not. A little bit did I hum? Okay, a little bit. It was hard not to be.
Almost.
Okay,
I sang during the silent dance, Shannon. You could
I
have.
know. In the silent dance, in
everyone
the
knows the
silent
words.
dance, the orchestration of this movie and the score of this movie is so beautiful. And in the silent dance, something comes in. The For Good motif, which they use a lot of the time when Glinda and Elphaba are having a nice moment. For Good is my favorite song in all of Wicked. And it's about their relationship. It's an incredible song. And the use of that motif made that moment, I thought, spectacular. I was crying, and I only hummed a little bit when it
Yes,
came in.
and I must say that was another strength of Cynthia Erivo's. She really brought the emotion to that character, because her like crying, not crying
Ugh.
every time she did that, I was
so good.
done.
Yeah, and the
done.
Glinda like wiping her tears away. Again, like I
Yeah.
think this is the advantage of having the extended time to kind of draw the story out, that like it doesn't immediately go from what is this feeling, unadulterated loathing, to 3 songs later, yeah, we're friends again, now I'm gonna help you. Like there actually is a lot of time, and you know, take or leave the extra characters that they've thrown in, all the asides they get of Elphaba essentially being bullied, for lack of a better term, but like it really paid off in this moment, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And even though it still does feel a little sudden of like, oh my god, they have this big heartbreak that tears them asunder towards the end of the first movie, this is a definitive step that helps make that more of a cogent and more like emotionally felt outcome.
It's so essential, because when like the lion, when they take the lion, like I'm like, is this the next day, or is like time passed? I'm like, how are these relationships being built between like Glinda and Fiyero, or like Glinda and Elphaba? Was it just a popular montage, and now like the relationship's gone from 0 to 100? Like you have to believe that it's important. I think they do that well, and I like to believe it was at the next day. But Grace, if you didn't like that moment, like you must not have liked the movie. That's like the main like emotional core of the movie. How could you not have liked? So what did you like?
No,
Okay, I'm just I'm surprised.
I think I get great. Like when I first saw that part, and the subsequent times that I've watched Wicked, I've wanted to fast forward through that part.
No.
Only because it's too much emotion for me.
Oh, interesting.
I'm like, I do not want to feel
Okay.
this right now. Let's keep going, but in a good way. Like that's at least that's for me. I don't know if that that resonates with Grace.
No, I think for me, I think it's like the rest of it works so well that like it's almost like I watch movie. I know what they want me to feel in that moment, and then I can like
I felt it.
pretend like I felt it as much as I did in the like I can buy it. I'm buying into it. I can buy into almost anything. So for me, I just think it's like I just don't love the like silent dance scene. I don't think it works for me. I think
Interesting.
I don't, you know, so Yeah.
It's
Watching
the
Hot Take,
bullying.
I
I
think.
can't. It's too much. It's like that's like. The
I mean, there
crescendo
is
of the
there's a
bullying.
little cringe to start, right? When you realize, like,
Yeah.
oh, it's a little Carrie-esque of, oh, they purposely set her up by having her wear this.
Exactly. Yes,
Though it's
Carrie.
like, it's also like, people look around at what you're wearing for, like,
I
what
know,
passes
so
as
funny.
Oz hip fashion. Like,
So
this
funny.
is the thing that's out, really? But I do think that what I find so incredibly interesting about all this as well is, like, yes, Oz is supposed to be this fantastical land where ridiculous things are being said and done and visually, audio wise, etc. For some reason, even, investing in this piece of pop culture 20 years through, I still have this mental break when it comes to the animals of it
Oh,
all.
yeah.
Like I did have a little bit of an out of body moment when we see Elphaba's birth and it's just a bear with a nurse's outfit on, and I'm like, well, I guess the other version would be what's done in the stage version, which is, for lack of a better term, an abomination of applying so many prosthetics to these poor actors to make them look like anthropomorphized animals. So I guess it's like, well, I guess we'll sort of live action Disney this, but it didn't. I guess it worked better, but it still didn't work completely for me.
The part that is so weird is that, like, I feel like the Wizard of Oz, like, nailed it. Like, the Cowardly Lion looks so great. So it's like, I don't know that this was like the thing we needed to redo, like, to fix. But that's just my take.
Well, they have to be talking animals because it's Wizard of Oz fanfic, which already exists in that world. So they're having to. They've just created a backstory for it.
I liked it. I see what you're saying. Like, it could have been like a BoJack. we're talking about like BoJack. Like
it could look like the Cowardly Lion. You could just look like the Cowardly Lion, right? Like, you could do different versions of the way that they looked in the Wizard of Oz movie.
Right, but I think also if the theme is supposed to be about them becoming domesticated and subjugated, where they lose like any rights of speech. And I think it does make thematic resonance as well, of like Elphaba trying to give a voice to the voiceless, herself feeling that subjugation as well, to feel like, okay, if they're going to silence the animals, this is something I want to stand for because everyone deserves the chance to be able to speak their mind.
And to fly.
It's also just for me a little bit of like the post Game of Thrones effect of like, I know this is just a tennis ball on a stick. Poor Cynthia Erivo having to interact with this thing on a soundstage, knowing that Peter Dinklage isn't actually there.
I liked it. I like the animals, how they did it. They could do more. They could do more animals. I do have a question though. Did you guys say that in the stage version, like, her childhood isn't addressed as much?
It's just a little bit shorter.
They really don't stop down. They're like, they montage the hell out of it. And it's basically the time when her dad drops her and Nessa off at school is the only time we see him in the entire show.
Isn't it the song? Isn't it through the song that they did?
Yeah,
all in song.
Which is still what happened in the movie, but they took more time to be, I think, right? Like
they stopped it.
Like, there's her childhood. I think in the musical she's like born.
Oh, they don't do anything with like the scene with her in the book and the maybe one of the cutest kids I've ever encountered in my life, and that includes my own child of baby Nessa Rose. Like, that is not in the show whatsoever.
Sure, that's been memified as well.
Okay, that makes sense.
The biggest differences of part one to the musical, so she meets Fiero in the woods, which I thought was really good. If anything, I thought they could have done a song there. There's like no like Glinda and Fiero song. Like, it starts through life, but
take a prologue into Dancing Through Life. Just make it longer.
Well, yeah, and I would eat it up. No, but like they could have done an extra song there. I think they could be more kind of duets, because I always feel like the love triangle is pretty thin, maybe by design, because that's not meant to be the focus.
And that's why I like I'm Not That Girl, is because I'm like, I actually kind of feel this now.
Yeah, but I think we need more. Like, that scene I thought was great in the woods, and kind of introduced this dynamic that we're meant to be invested in. And I thought maybe there could be a song. They could also do more between Glinda and Fiero again, so we're like are more invested in this love triangle. I think that they could do, but they kind of changed the way that Elphaba comes to Shiz. Like, in the musical, she comes to be enrolled. I think it worked that they were like, she wasn't going to be enrolled, but then, she shows her powers and she is. They show the dad having a heart attack at the end, which doesn't happen in the musical. It was funny. What else, Mike? And then the cameos and extending one short day.
Can we the biggest thing that people put in the comments of the poll is how much they broke up Defying Gravity.
Yeah.
So Defying Gravity.
I really want to talk about that. Yeah.
So let's talk about it.
Yeah, because when I say about shooting the scenery, this was
go ahead, Amari.
Just before we break down Defying Gravity, I just want to say that reminds me why I didn't want to watch the musical, because when I read the book and then I found out that the musical mostly took place at Shiz University, I was like, that's stupid because literally the book is mostly her childhood. The book is like
Oh.
50 to 60% of her childhood.
Right.
Shiz is like the smallest portion, and then it's like all of the big stuff in like part 2. So I think that really just clicked in my mind. I was like, yes, I remember that was the main thing I was mad at because they literally didn't touch on her childhood at all. Again, because it was very dark. And they blew up the shiz part, which was not much in the book. So all right, yes, let's break down Defying Gravity.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
because I think actually, like in terms of it being a two-parter, and then we'll get to Defying Gravity. I thought it worked really well as a two-parter, based on like how, obviously being pretty true to the musical. They're pretty different parts actually when you think it. Like now that I'm like experiencing it in the like way that they've cut it in half. Yeah, I mean this is the prequel to Wizard of Oz, and then the second part is in tandem with the Wizard of Oz, in side by side.
They work in tandem.
Yeah, exactly, interwoven with it. And as a prequel, I mean, we can talk about how we think part 2 will go. I think this works really well. Like, I think they did really well getting into like the subgenre of like fantasy high schools or universities. Like, they made shiz like Hogwarts. They made that exciting and again, like grand and ethereal. And I think that really worked as a prequel. Like, it's almost like they could do like a shiz spin-off, like what's been happening at shiz, but instead it's going to go a different way. It's going to go to the Wizard of Oz. But I actually felt like that worked really well. Other than the fact that like obviously it begins at the end. Like this really could be a standalone movie of like how the Wicked Witch becomes what they know of the Wicked Witch of the West. And I don't think we can say that about the second movie. Like the second movie, I don't think can be a standalone movie other than the fact that it is the Wizard of Oz. But in what it's showing, I think it requires this foundation. Whereas this actually, like if there was no part 2, we all got something out of it. It had like a finite end.
Yeah, without saying too much, it's more so like the Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead, or like the Lion King 1.5 of the Wizard of Oz, where it's going to be like, I don't know, depending on how the movie's done, you might see snatches of things you're familiar with, but it's going to focus on like what happens maybe before and after scenes that you are familiar with. But let's talk about Defying Gravity because, I mean, it makes sense, right? Like this is the coup de grace. This is arguably one of the most famous songs, not only in the show, but in modern musical theater culture. So you wanna make a meal out of it. Did I need necessarily the multiple location changes and, 17 dialogue breaks? I'm not sure. But for some reason, the one that really did work for me
Killer.
She's
Get
get her. She's wicked. Get her.
Killer does it get her? I thought I heard
killer. They say killer.
But it's when it's right before the battle cry when they hold, and it's just like this sound of the wind blowing while everyone just kind of stares, including our two big recently revealed villains and the wizard and Madame Morrible, just like staring awestruck at her, just waiting for what's about to happen next. Like I felt that anticipation. I don't know if it made up necessarily for the fact that it did feel a little bit like, all right, so we're going to kind of jog a lap and then take a water break and then jog another lap and do that with this song, as opposed to kind of the full 5-minute sprint that the song usually is.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, go for it. I think it works for me, but I've watched the stage production once and have not really like listened to the recordings of it like much. So for me, this is kind of like the version this is like my version, I guess. And I feel like both times I watch, like I just feel like it's so epic. I'm like, this is like it keeps going and going and going. And every time you do feel like, well, they could end it here. I think about this a lot when I'm watching movies. Is like, oh, is this the last shot? Like I can't stop thinking about that. And honestly, like they kept doing, and I was like, oh no, but that's better. Like I kept feeling, oh no, that's better. Oh, that's better. Until it finally actually ends. I really like the way they like sort of like break this up. But
I actually did too. Like going and seeing a movie that you have no clue what you're going to go see, and then like seeing it and then trying to like interpret it, especially for a movie musical. For me, when I went, I saw it and I was like, I knew Defying Gravity. So much so that my friend who kind of fell asleep a little bit, it like right around the sentimental man, as soon as the first note of Defying Gravity started, I was like, oh my God. I was like, it's good stuff coming. I like that scene was like great. And then I immediately, literally on my ride back home, I listened to No One Mourns the Wicked at least like 8 times. That is probably my favorite song. And then I listened to Defying Gravity. And then I went back and watched the movie again. So when you watch the movie, it feels like a million breaks. And then when you listen to the soundtrack, it's a few less breaks because of course it's still 7 minutes, but it's less. And then when you go back to the movie, I was like, it works when you're looking at the visual medium, because as I was listening to the soundtrack, I was remembering the snapshots of the movie in my head. And I remember, I specifically remember like Cynthia Erivo start getting choked up when it was like, when she goes into like, I can't want it, you know what I'm saying, anymore. Yeah. And I was like, that was a great moment, but why did she get that? Like, why did she get that worked up? And then when I went back and watched the movie, I forgot because they stopped in the middle of when they first started it. And that part for Madame Morrible to be like, she's horrible, she's wicked, her outer personification of blah, 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 blah. Like, she heard the whole monologue of Madame Morrible calling her like the worst person alive. And then she has to go straight into the rest of Defying Gravity. And she's like choked up. And I'm like, damn, that's good. Like, it worked. You know what I'm saying? Like, yes, it was long. They basically stretched that song over like 30 minutes. Like the end of the movie was like the last 20 minutes. But I do think it works from a visual medium. And then when they put it in the soundtrack, you know, it's fine. It works as well. So I'm not mad at it.
Does the soundtrack include the audio from like the one brief horror minute in this 2-hour 40-minute picture where the monkeys just start like busting their way through the glass and trying to kill Ariana Grande?
Yeah, well,
literal jump scare for my niece, Mike.
It's funny because like you say that, you know, the question, do people know if this was a musical? I thought that was pretty well advertised, but the thing that was not advertised was that this was 2 parts. Like, it's called Wicked, and I think they
doomed him for sure.
I've spoken to so many people who are musical theater and Wicked fans who didn't know that it was 2 parts. So it's funny because like you go into like there's like 20-30 minutes left before Defying Gravity. You're like, wow, they're really gonna have to speed through that second half. It's like, no, Defying Gravity is 30 minutes. So that's what's happening with it. I have a lot of thoughts on Defying Gravity. First, I wanted to give these stats on Defying Gravity as a song. I go to Club Broadway, which is a club that does Broadway songs. We all sing it. Defying Gravity always goes off. There's a moment, the first time I went, there was someone dressed, like obviously it was Alpha, but all in green. And everyone was like yelling, like, pick her up, do it. And everyone's like, yeah. And then they like picked her up during the bridge and everyone was like, yeah. And I was like, this is the best thing I've ever been a part of ever. So people love Defying Gravity. They're doing a vote for like the top 100 musical songs so we can all go dance to them.
It is weird. When I went on stage at Wicked, the performance, and picked up Alphabet, they got very mad at me.
Well, so here's a little funny piece of Broadway trivia to again be a bit of a, maybe in true Defying Gravity fashion, to be a deviation from Shannon's stats here. Do you know, so obviously in the show, when Elphaba is doing her final, so if you care to find me, she's on this like mechanical lift that goes up, and this is
the shoulders of randoms at Club
just giant billowing dress. Do you know what the worst case scenario is for the performers in that show if the lift does not work?
They run up the stage to make it look like she's high up above, right?
Or in some cases, you get down on your stomach to pretend like she is very high up in the air and you are itty bitty down below.
Amazing. Right.
That's also the story is that Idina Menzel, the last performance she did on Broadway, the mechanical lift malfunctioned and she broke her rib and couldn't finish the performance.
Oh,
wait, she couldn't finish the performance. That's the end of the musical.
No, Defying Gravity.
Yeah, Defying Gravity.
Oh, so right. It's not the end of the musical in my head.
So somebody
I'm like, that's the end. Look how I've already been movified by the movie.
Okay, sorry, Shannon, we interrupted you for a joke.
You think that you would do another performance if that's how it ended? Well, like for me, like for my I just couldn't have it finished that way. That's horrible. Wait, so but they sometimes run down the stage, I thought, to be like she's
they do sometimes do also run down the stage to provide perspective. Yeah, I've also heard the rumors that there's also crawl on your belly like a salamander to
plan.
provide a different perspective.
Plan C, the
I
stomach
kind of want to
plan.
see that. I need the where's the slime tutorial, please?
That's
Somebody.
hard because as a vocalist to be like, she's wicked, and you're like, oh, no, like there's no like you can't get the diaphragm to work. Anyway, the stats on Defying Gravity from Australia's biggest musical fans. Number one show tune was Defying Gravity, as voted for last year. It was 2.3 times as many more votes as One Day More, which was number 2. Defying Gravity received almost as many votes as the second, which was One Day More. Cell Block Tango was number 4, and Seasons of Love was number 3. 6.6%. Now it's gone. But 6.6% of like all votes for Defying Gravity of all musical songs. People love Defying Gravity. That's why they just like again eked it out to within an inch of its life. And I do think that for me, the Defying Gravity, like it's kind of what I said about the whole musical at the beginning, which is like, okay, it's super long. That is concerning. It worked better than I thought, but there are still some things that were egregious. You know, like you would think if they're going to do it, however long it was, a 20-minute Defying Gravity, you're like, oh, that's like 10 minutes too long. But instead it was like 3 minutes too long. But there is parts of it where like, that I think were like unforgivable from like a, you know, they're trying to like build the momentum, but then they do the din 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 stop, talk, and then she goes to later after a whole part of dialogue, so if you care to find me. You got to build it up again before she gets to so if you care to find me. Those things are very importantly linked to each other. So again, they took every single opportunity that they had to eke it out. And no point did someone say, maybe this time we don't. At every single point in the whole movie and Defying Gravity, they were like, and add more, you know.
It definitely felt like a and another thing.
No, I do think to that point, Shannon, like that's the one that really reverberated the most in my head when you brought it up, was when she does that, again, a really cool moment that could only be represented through the medium film, which is her falling off the tower and seeing the younger version of herself and doing the whole "it's me." Like then it should have gone directly into that climax. Like to your point, then it sort of stops down for a hot second, 100%. And everyone's kind of like, all right, she's kind of just floating here. I guess we'll listen to what she has to say.
But that's definitely how I was perceived it for like, nobody in all the comeback. Like, that is how it felt.
There is or was.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay, so that's interesting. I want to ask Grace, because you are way more, you're the movie person, and I am not. Because people are talking about it from an award perspective. I'm like, is that like the people talked about Barbie, and I didn't agree then. I think it's so important. Again, these movies, like we said, Barbenheimer, Wicked, are so important to the medium of like theater, and the Spectre one, that very much what you said, Mike, the experience, 100%, so essential. But is that award worthy in your mind? Where do you sit with it?
Yeah, so I think that this movie, so I think the best thing this has going for it is that it is a pretty, like, it's not the strongest year in terms of a front runner best picture. Anora is kind of the front runner so far this year, and even then I feel like Wicked might be gaining some momentum that might take it over. I believe I really like Variety's Oscar predictions, and they have Wicked over Anora for best picture. They have Ariana Grande over Carlos Sofia Gascon, I think is the leading. Maybe Zoe Saldana for
that would be huge.
Which that makes no sense that Zoe Saldana is supporting in that movie, but that's fine. And then
in which movie?
Actually in Emilia Perez.
Oh, Emilia Perez.
And then they actually have,
but that's also a musical, right?
It is a musical, and they also have Cynthia Erivo over Mikey Madison, that's very new. So Wicked, is kind of like making this late run. The unfortunate thing is that like this sounds so weird, but it almost could be a little too early as well, just in terms of like the Oscar race. Now, this was the perfect time for it to come out. It's coming out about the same time next year. There's also nothing else that I was talking with this to Mike before. There's nothing really else in that like December window that I feel like has the same appeal. Like sometimes you would see like Star Wars or some other stuff that would sort of like be that like family movie at the end of the year. There's nothing. There's like the Bob Dylan movie. There's Nosferatu and something else. Those are not the same.
Something that comes out on December 20th.
I think Wicked has a pretty long run here in terms of the only thing that's up against is Moana, and it I think honestly it has more of a tail.
Moana
than Moana.
Moana 2.
Yeah, I haven't seen that. That should not be anywhere near anyone's.
Do you
Well,
think
Moana won the box office. The Moana had the largest Thanksgiving
Thanksgiving
Day
opening
weekend
ever?
ever in history.
And I
There's
was
a lot
part of
people-
that. I was there opening weekend. You best believe it.
Oh, I
but
see what you're saying. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yes, more people are more likely to go see Wicked again than I think they are to go see Moana 2
Yeah.
again. So yeah,
I think
but in terms
who would
of,
see Moana 2 again? Even the children surely know that they'll just go back to the first.
Oh, Mufasa's coming out.
Yeah, I'm going to the premiere of that
Sorry, I
tomorrow
did
night,
for-
apparently.
I did forget about Mufasa.
So if you love the
that's-
Cowardly
I think that's
Lion,
the
check
one
out
I
all
was
of his
thinking of.
brothers in Mufasa.
But
coming
again,
December.
I do think the thing for me, Murray, is the thing I said at the beginning, that there is a
Mhm.
little bit of like the things that do really, really well at the box office are like kids movies. When you look at like Despicable Me and Super Mario Brothers and like
Mhm.
Inside Out 2 is
Sonic
probably
3 is
God
coming
damn,
out.
these are all the
Sonic 3
movies
is
that I
coming
go
out.
to.
There is like kid stuff, but I feel it's like a thing that
All my
people go
movies.
to the movies with their friends as a like those
Yeah.
are the two. Like I feel like people are going to this and then going to see it again. So I feel like it has a ton of momentum to keep being seen, and I think it clearly has the momentum for Best Picture as well right now. I did ask the audience, most people think it won't win, but more than half the people said they want it to win.
Mm.
Do you think, Grace, there will be some sort of Lord of the Rings effect of they know part 2 is coming, and so maybe voters would be less likely to vote for it this time around than they would in 2026?
So I have heard that from so the big difference here is like public perception versus critics, right? Like that, because that's who's voted. The body is going to vote on it. There definitely is that. I'm a big believer that is silly. I don't think that we should say just because another movie is coming that we should not give the movie that was clearly very good the Best Picture. I still think Anora is my favorite movie of the year, but I will be very happy if Wicked wins. So I think it would be a very good sign of something that is both mainstream and has critical appeal. But I'm feeling a little bit of the like, oh, you're gonna give it to Wicked from like critics. So I'm a little worried that like that momentum will die out a little bit on the critics.
Is that why they brought Michelle Yeoh on? They're like, we got to keep the streak going. She's good luck at this point.
That's true.
Yeah.
That is true. It has a very good chance at it probably actually is the front runner for a lot of the underlying like I think like technical sound stuff is going to be Dune, and then costume and all that stuff is probably going to be Wicked, I feel like. So
it's like the Moana stat is just crazy to me because I'm like, no one's talking about it, but then I'm like, they're kids and they were actually banned from being on social media and
Moana,
recently.
Moana is the most successful thing that has ever been on stream. Like not just like there's no caveat to that. It's the most successful thing that has ever been on streaming.
Yeah, that feels like its own thing because there's a lot going on there. I mean, kids see a lot of movies. Moana 2 was like the main one. Do you think they didn't know that Lin-Manuel Miranda wasn't coming back?
Probably.
That was
Right.
It didn't necessarily. They didn't. Again, they're not on social media, so they had no idea. So they went in. They started weeping at the fact that there was no Lin-Manuel Miranda involvement.
Mike, other than the moment at the beginning where we talked about Glickit, I can't remember if that was on or off the pod. We haven't really mentioned Gladiator. The only thing I want to mention is that somebody in the comments said the monkeys were better in Wicked than they were in Gladiator. There are CGI monkeys in both movies. That's a true fact.
Serious?
And they are better in Wicked than they are in Gladiator.
Wow.
Do you think there's an award for that?
Yeah, best monkey.
Best monkeys. Yeah. The Moana stuff's just crazy to me. I want to talk about part 2, but also and are you hearing? And it's not because of me clapping, but now I feel bad. Now I feel like the clapping was wrong because I've been reading a lot about how theater etiquette is at its absolute worst. And then I went to Moana on opening weekend, and the kids were actually fine, but all of the parents chaperoning them were just scrolling their phones, and I was like, have some decorum. But now I'm thinking, am I the drama because I clapped after the songs? But they worked so hard on the songs and they deserve a bit of an ovation.
I don't know what to do, Shannon, about movie etiquette. It's like real bad.
I was talking to Ian Porter about this because he's like head of like this major movie chain. He's like, yeah, it's the worst it's ever been. I'm like, solve it, Eden. We are relying on you.
I don't know what you do. Yeah, I don't know what you do, Mari, but it's bad. It's so bad. I don't know.
So as a parent who has taken a 5-year-old to a few movies, you know what I'm saying? I like that they now just have like kids shows. Like, yes, Moana, it should be default. It's like should be default. Like if you're coming to see Moana 2, expect kids. You can't be mad.
The kids were great. The kids were excellent. Their parents were the issue. Firstly, it was an 8:30 showing. I was surprised there were so many kids. Secondly, they were good
early.
No, it was 8:30 at night. You think
I was going to say 8:30 in the morning?
Did you know me? Would I be awake then? No.
Shannon, I get it. Everybody hates phones in the movie theaters. But as a parent who's taking a child to a movie that I do not want to see, I fall asleep.
That's fine.
My
That
choice
doesn't bother
is
me.
to
That's
we go to a fancy one. So I do have a small little drinky drink, and I fall asleep.
That's great. The seats were very
That is
comfortable.
great
Let me tell
parenting.
you.
They
I just
are,
I
yeah.
don't think I think that that taking kids to movies you don't want to see is like a tale as old as time. But I
It's the
think this
worst.
is new. Believe me, I go to a lot of kids movies and I have not seen it like this. People are emboldened more now than ever. It's interesting. It's interesting
Yeah.
that the Wicked showing I was at was very good. I'm now thinking I was the one people were
You
complaining
were the problem.
yeah.
I mean,
in
that's
show,
the
but
thing
it's
as well, is
okay.
that I
I
always get fearful when I go into like an absolutely crowded theater. My ideal movie viewing experience is to like go to that 10:30 a.m. showing where there are like 10 people.
Nobody there. Yep.
Don't need to necessarily
agree.
worry about like, am I blocking someone's view?
Absolutely.
But I was afraid by just the pure volume of people and a pure, probabilistic perspective that like, oh yeah, there'll probably be some issue with the phone going off or like someone talking too loudly or worst case scenario, some sort of disturbance. No, everyone's attention was pretty damn wrapped on what was happening. I think that speaks to the quality of the film, that no matter what your perspective is when you came in, there was something there, at least in the 2 hours and 40 minutes, that like kept you focused on what was going on the big screen rather than the little one.
Is there gonna be the sing along? Are they still gonna do the sing alongs?
I believe they've been doing them. Yeah.
I want to go to that. I do. I want to.
The ones near me are dropping the ball then, because I have not.
Yeah, set for Christmas. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I do think that movie etiquette is worse than it's ever been. My problem, like when I go to a movie theater, like I did go to see Moana 2, and there was some very chatty kids, but I'm like, that's what I signed up for, to come to Moana 2. Like, I don't care. But if you're a chatty adults who are not with kids, that's why, like, if you're telling your kid to be like, it's just the behavior of like a phone going off. I'm like, we all probably have our phones on. It's weird that your phone is even not just like constantly on silent like mine, but that's fine. But things that are by accent are fine, or like or like kids or whatever. It's like, people who talk through the whole thing or are on their phone the whole time. It annoys me tremendously. I will say I have anytime I've actually come out of the theater, not during, I don't tend to like get up because I feel like it's during my experience. I have gone and been like, hey, that was annoying. I've pretty much always been comped another ticket. So just as a general thing, if you're like, I have people beside me who are very chatty and wouldn't stop talking, I told them to stop talking, they wouldn't stop talking. They might say like, you should have come out and told us, but typically they're just going to comp you a movie ticket.
Well, then you should be getting a free movie for every single movie you go to. You should get another free movie, because they're all terrible, other than Wicked, which was good, other than the woman clapping.
I go to a lot of.
I mean, maybe Shannon, you actually paid for a lot of comp tickets that day, because someone was like, this lady kept
some annoying woman keeps clapping after every number.
Yeah.
I was trying to lead it, like when we saw the Eras tour.
But why were you trying to lead it?
Because it was so inspirational. I had to clap. When we saw the Eras tour movie, people didn't know how to be. Maybe the Eras tour movie.
That was different. Yeah, I went to go see the Eras tour movie, and that was people treating it like a concert. There was
but they got told they could. They got told they could.
But I think that is fine because it's different. But it might have created this it broke the barrier of people like, we can do this in movies now. But I thought that when I went to the Eras tour, people were too much watching it like a movie. I was like, where's the vibes? And then I started doing, and then some people did as well. So
the only one I didn't like about the Eras tour was when people were putting on their flashlight and then people could see me in a movie theater. That's not how it's intended to be.
Yeah, I was like, I don't like this. The point of the theater is that it's dark and relatively anonymous.
Yeah, why am I being
break the rule?
Yeah, I do think that it's possible that things like that, like interactive movie experiences, have probably not impacted well. And then also the fact that we're more on our phones than ever. People usually watch movies and streaming now. People are going to the movies maybe a little bit less. So then when they go to the movies, they're like, but I can still be on my phone, right? So anyway, speaking of, can we discuss? Oh, yes, you go, Mari.
No, I was just gonna say I haven't ran into a lot of that. I think it's because we have an Alamo Draft House, and I just go there. I usually just go there. But they throw movie parties. So a few years ago, me and one of my friends went to go to a Mean Girls party on October 3rd. And you were encouraged to say the lines in the movie and stuff like that. So I wonder if it's just the way we interact with movies has changed. But I agree. It's everybody out there, please just be respectful for everybody else who's in that theater. The default should be quiet, shut your phone off, or whatever they tell you on that big screen right before the movie comes on, But if you want to be able to talk and stuff like that in a movie, go to a movie like that. Like go to a movie that specifies that. Because in the sensory, I know in the sensory ones, sensory friendly ones and the kids ones, you can actually, even if you're adults, you can talk in that. Because it's a kid, they designate it like chill and
should there be like a meme screening of Wicked where like, okay, during those specific 8 bars of what is this feeling, you do the choreography, everyone says Bach at the same time if it's not re-edited, like it's almost becomes like
there should be a showing where you have to bring a friend named Bach, and it's called the Me and Bach showing.
I also will say, look, there was a lot of very understandably bad shit that went down around Ethan Slater and Ariana Grande over the course of this film, but like, listen, again, I say this as like a musical theater diehard. Like Ethan Slater is very talented, and granted, he didn't show off a lot in this movie, but what he did get to sing, I was like, oh yeah, like you're like go see the SpongeBob musical. It's now like the pro tape has now been released. Like it's an incredibly hard role, and he's very good at it. Wish it did not come with the home wrecking variety as a part of all that.
But it's crazy to think that that's how far back the drama goes. Like, this has been huge on screen, but, like, the lore around it and the drama and, like, the meme of all of that has been going on for so long. Like, that feels like years ago. I understand it was, like, last year, but it feels like a really long time ago.
It does, and I can't stop myself from calling him SpongeBob.
And
SpongeBob.
He's on
SpongeBob.
SpongeBob.
SpongeBob. I love that.
SpongeBob.
Okay, speaking of, I want to talk about part 2, which is obviously coming out in a year.
November.
Yeah. So in like the fact that they've broken up, I'm like, yeah, part 1 for me works a lot better than part 2. I'm like, a lot of my issues must be in part 2. Like, I think if it's going to win awards, this is the time because like, again, like this is going to sound like a pun, but it's not. Like, I think there are more grounded musicals than Wicked. And again, like, it's like fair things about it being a Wizard of Oz fan fiction that it's like, we can laugh at that a little bit, or it might go through pains to kind of make something work that doesn't work as well. But I feel like that's pretty much all in part 2. So looking at it, I'm like, this is kind of like the perfect encapsulation of like the themes and like the importance of it and the spectacle without all of the things that have me going to, Reddit being like, wait, but why does Fiyero do that? And it doesn't make sense. But I will say and we're not going to spoil part 2, parts of part 2, because it's interwoven with Wizard of Oz, you're like, how, what? And they're like, are changing things up. I did read a theory that was like, imagine Wizard of Oz isn't necessarily what happened, but it is propaganda by the wizard. And I'm like, I need that for my soul, because then if you're thinking about any potential plot holes or like the pains they go through to kind of like change things in hindsight, I'm like, all right, it's fine, because that didn't necessarily happen. That's just propaganda from the wizard. So that's what I'm doing now, and it's making me feel a lot better about any of the issues that I had. But I do think that part 2 will have a tougher time as a standalone movie because it's just, I think, not as strong. But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'll be completely candid. Wicked's a little bit of the horse drawing meme for me.
Yeah,
a horse of a different color. Where like, I mean, Act 2, again, without getting into too many specifics, but like, as long as you're mine, no good deed for good. Like, there's some songs that slap in there. There are some other things that are a little debatable, things that are a little shoehorned in there, things that don't necessarily work. And so I am really intrigued. That's what I'm most excited about, is the adaptation of this. I have heard they're actually writing 2 new songs for part 2. I don't know if they are meant to replace perhaps 2 songs that are not as good. I would imagine, given the fact that we still had Sentimental Man and Something Bad in part 1, that will not be the case. But, I have every right to trust John M. Chu and what this team was doing from the first movie. Even if there is weaker material in the second one, then I still trust there's going to be some stuff to kind of lift the rising tides. And who knows, maybe they'll be able to like actually make a meal and really reshape something that I have a bunch of problems with into the ideal version of what Act 2 of Wicked should be.
Okay, I just have to say that like my phone just went off in the podcast after we long-term talked about phones going off in the movie. Funny. And it wasn't even my fault. I think it was doing it on purpose to prove a point. But anyway.
That's so funny. I don't really remember what happens in part 2 of Wicked, so I will be in for a nice treat unless I somehow see the musical again. There's also Steven Schwartz and Winnie Holtzman have also been like maybe more Wicked franchise. So that
Okay,
scares me.
no,
That's good. But they have
Where
said
can
it.
that
no.
go? I have questions.
They have talked about that they would be interested in doing more Wicked content that's not Wicked Part 3 or 4. They've said so.
I don't know how that would look. I mean, it ends like you've seen
Expanding the Wicked
It
film
is.
universe.
Wicked Man.
Well, I
Wicked
did say that
Cinematic
like you could
Universe.
do shivs. Like they could make a like high school TV show, well, I guess college, about shivs. That's kind of like this magic. and I
Not
think they could do that
everything
with
needs to
different
be
characters.
IP.
Well, that's what they would do. If I was them, that's how I would.
I
would
Yeah,
run.
but
I
well,
don't
it's
think
also
they
to be
should.
noted. Wait, is this is a Warner Brothers property, right?
Yeah.
Is it not? David Zaslav. We know how much he loves doing that stuff.
I
Went
hate
to
that man.
Max.
So
That
yeah.
would be. Yeah, that would be a
I'm
lot.
gonna have to figure out where to show my kids Sesame Street because of him.
Yeah. True.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think I'm being too harsh on it because I'm like, that's where my criticisms are. I still love Wicked. Like, just like any kind of questions I have are probably in part 2. I still think it's great. And I think this first part did very well in, like all of the important themes are here. Not that they don't continue on to part 2, but like we get so much of it here. There's so much, there's important stuff. Like, again, I don't want to dismiss it because it's, Wicked and like, again, like it's the spectacle because it's about important things, bystander effect. What is really good? What's good not being popular?
Does
like
one
it's
have
all
wickedness
there.
thrust upon them?
100%. And I think that all of that stuff is interesting and important. So I'm excited for part 2. I'm more intrigued about part 2 about how it will go. But yeah, this was Wicked part 1.
These might be different. This might not be Zaslav, Mike. This might be Universal. I think is Wicked. Is that right?
Oh,
am I right in that? I think that's right.
Universal is Wicked. Yep. Mm-hmm.
What should they call?
Oh
Wicked
yeah.
2?
It's Peacock. Yeah, because Peacock had all the behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah.
What should they call Wicked 2? Do you think maybe like Twicked or because I thought they should call Moana 2 Motua, but I don't have.
Of
Gladiator already did. Gladiator already did the 2 Roman numerals for the I in Gladiator, so they.
Oh, that'd be great. They should probably just do that.
Wicked with
Wicked.
Wickeder?
Wickeder, maybe? What do you think, Mike? This is usually what we do for like swap tribes and Survivor, but I don't have a good one. I think maybe Wickeder or Wicked.
Wicked.
I mean,
it is weird that this one is called Wicked, and then they did do the part 1, so that is strange. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because then we're even from Dune's perspective, right, Chris? It was Dune,
Dune
part
Dune,
2, and then now Dune Messiah, if it ever comes out. So like, they could change up the numerology as they get through it and do like Wicked part 1, and then like Wicked : No One Mourns.
That's right.
Oh no.
Or like no one. I mean, you could call the second movie No One Mourns the Wicked.
Well,
also, do like the whole live free or die hard of it all.
In part 2, they have to do a reprise of Defying Gravity. What are they going to not do Defying Gravity in a Wicked movie? That would be
They should just start it off by kind of doing a previously on and just replay
just do the entire 30 minutes. They have to. They have to. If there is no Defying Gravity in part 2 of Wicked, I will eat like Elphaba's hat. Like there's no way. So they will have to. It's going to be more different, I think, than this was different from part 1 of actual Wicked.
Well, and that's the interesting thing as well, is you could say, oh, well, they're going to respond to this and that. But like, as far as I know, again, to go back to the Lord of the Rings analogy, they filmed parts 1 and 2 together.
Yeah.
So unless they decide to get everyone back out on that soundstage and do reshoots or just say, hey, you know what? We're bringing in Nessa again to redo Buck. Let's just redo a bunch of other things while we're at it, do a bunch of ADR. It's pretty much going to be as in the can as it is right now.
I believe they also already pretty much did a bunch of their reshoots already. So yeah. So they have to be going back again.
Yeah,
so.
It seems like they probably will have a lot on. So
and considering there's certainly been some debate about like when Ariana Grande wasn't nominated for a Grammy, some people were saying like, well, she had to dedicate a lot of she was holding a lot of space, I should say, to marketing Wicked as opposed to like marketing her new album. I would imagine some people that like need to actually do careers would be like, I don't have time at the moment. I've given so much of myself to you, Wicked, in all this time in 2024. I can't extend that into 2025.
Yeah.
I think next year's going to be, a big, because there'll be the point where it goes on streaming and then the press will start for Wicked Part 2. It's going to be a bigger Wicked year next year maybe.
Wickeder, some might say.
It'll be wicked.
Can you imagine
Wickeder.
if it was like previously on and then they do the 30 minutes? That would be
That'd be so great.
incredible.
Apparently,
So
there's also a
good.
bunch of deleted scenes as well because I know Bo and
There
Yang
are.
talked about that Fanny scenes.
Yeah,
Fanny and
so
Shannon
so
scenes.
they Deadline's been doing this lately, where they've been like read the original screenplay for a bunch of movies, and so they did that for Wicked, and so there are a couple. One of them is that Fierro and Bach like find a tree and chop it down, and both of them are shirtless.
There's
at
no
one
way
point.
that that's true.
And
I
the-
can't
and the-
believe these things that
And
I
the,
read.
and the script
Wait,
writes out
how'd you
like,
get my fanfic?
oh, I'm so sorry. I just have to replace it. Because I think that the actual written, not dialogue, but I guess the description text is like, Fierro takes off his shirt. Wow. Then we see Bach shirtless. Wow. And it's like, maybe listen, I would not necessarily feel like Ethan Slater needs a lot of good stuff coming his way, but maybe they did him a solid here by not relegating him to a deleted scene where they just body shame him.
Wow.
What do you
I
feel
like
about-
that. I like that they said that John Chu would make them do the takes, like he'd make them do the takes, make them do it serious, and then he'd be like, "Okay, now just do one just for fun," and he would let the actors improv and stuff, and Bo and Yang said that he used basically all of the improv stuff for.
Yeah, I think
his
that's where
character part.
That's where right comes from too. I believe when she slams.
Yeah,
with
with-
that, I think that's an
yeah.
improv.
Yeah,
Well,
and I
Ariana
think,
Grande.
yeah, and then the
She says,
high
"Oh."
kick she does at the end of Popular
The
too,
high
I believe
kick.
it. But yeah, the Bo and Yang, I love Bo and Yang, and I forget the other actress who appears alongside him.
Side him, yeah,
Yeah,
she's hilarious, too.
Bronwyn James. I did
Yeah.
feel a little like all right, let's just inject a little bit of Judd Apatow into Wicked here, but like it worked well enough. It didn't take me too much out of it that we had a bunch of random asides with them.
I love your shoulder pads.
Do we feel like the fact that Peter Dinklage is the GOAT? This is like more of a musical because it's taken from the source material. Like, do you think they're being heavy-handed on like the scapegoating because that's like a massive theme in it? I'm just realizing now. Wicked might be a little heavy-handed, but I love it. It's fine. All of the stuff is good. He was literally a scapegoat.
That there's like a literal scapegoat.
I didn't think about
Which
that.
is also, to be fair, so prevalent. Like again, like heavy-handed, but like themes that are resonant and relevant.
Is that heavy-handed if it took us an hour 40 to be like, hey?
Not an hour 40. I saw the musical 10 years ago, and I'm just now thinking,
fair,
like, looking at the themes. I'm like, like objective morality versus like decided morality, scapegoating. I'm like, scapegoating. Oh, I see you. I see you.
I think for me, one of the biggest themes that I really came to terms with over the course of this, and I think it does track again really well with Cynthia Erivo and her background as Alphabet, is like, oh, you're so magical. We love you for your powers. We want to nurture this. We want to plant this seed. And they take her to the Emerald City. They're like, okay, we're going to have you do this one thing. Oh, you don't like that? Well, you're evil now. It's very much like we want to use you for this one purpose. And if you don't fill your role, then we're just going to completely vilify you because you have no use to us anymore.
And it does a lot of really good stuff in like vilification, like the fact that they don't call her Alpha, but they call her like the Wicked Witch of the West. Like they dehumanize her. And I do think that the second movie, when that's happening and now she is the Wicked Witch of the West, will probably do some really interesting stuff around that they will probably, invest even more in. So
yeah, it's the propaganda of it all.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and how it'll be turned up in the second part. Yeah, I can't wait.
Oh my god. Well, I would say we won't have to wait much longer. It will be 11 months at this point because again, we're coming out with this 1 month later, but it'll pass by because again, as we've talked about,
1 month late.
Exactly.
To release this podcast.
Well, because we'll have award season. To Grace's point, that's really going to pick up in the new year, and so I think there's still going to be a lot of Wicked discourse. It's going to have a long tail, I think, going into the first half of 2025, and then at that point, they're going to start doing marketing again for Wicked Part 2, and hopefully more mimetic moments happen from that. Though it's also tough because now I imagine, especially as someone who's like putting myself in the head of all these people that are doing these press junkets of like, okay, are people now just going to try to become that holding space
100%.
person? And like, what is that going to mean?
Have you seen them react to the holding space thing?
I know,
That
it
already
feels-
happened.
It feels a
Okay.
little almost like lampooning of itself. Like only on 30 Rock would you have the two people involved in the meme do a deep dive on what they were thinking about while the meme was happening. It is truly ridiculous. But regardless, I was so happy to have the time to sit down with the three of you and talk about how much we all adored this movie. I think, despite maybe some random quibbles here or there, I think it's an immensely enjoyable experience for all of us. I'm sure it was for all of the people who filled out the survey. Grace, any other interesting little tidbits from the survey that you sent out to the patrons?
Apparently Lush is selling a Wicked bath bomb that looks like Elphaba's hat and turns your bathwater green. So that's pretty cool.
Well, that's the
so
thing. Yeah, the
cool.
Wicked marketing machine
My
has
gosh.
just been absolutely monstrous.
Well, I think
It was
that's
like
probably why we
Barbie.
thought it was Warner Brothers, because Barbie's marketing campaign was so strong, but yeah, this was pretty good. Yeah.
I gotta look for that immediately.
I
I'm
know.
sorry.
It's already
During this
working.
podcast, I've already looked for tickets to the Wicked sing along, tickets to the Broadway show, and now the bath bomb. Because if I don't do it right now, I'll forget.
Mari, I went to
God
go buy the
damn, like,
book, but I
that's
can
so
only
much product placement in the podcast.
but I can only find the version where the cover is the movie.
It is
cast,
the
and I
movie.
don't-
Yep.
And I don't want that one. I don't. I feel like it's not the same. But
I don't think they changed the book. Me and my friend, we share a library card, and I saw that she downloaded the audiobook. I was trying to decide if I should warn her.
Yeah.
Yeah, just switch it out with the soundtrack. It's like, oh, it's just like the real thing. It's just like the movie.
True.
You know what I'm gonna do after this? I'm gonna go listen to Dancing Through Life.
No, but we had almost 100 people submit the poll, so very much appreciated for an
Thank
impromptu poll that we
you.
put up with throughout a day. Very fun. Overall, the last one I
Mine's
don't think I
short day.
mentioned. On average, the patrons rate this movie a 9 out of 10. That's the
Woo!
average rating for this
9
movie.
out of 10. Wow.
9 out of 10.
I loved it too. Like, yeah, any of these criticisms, I'm kind of was just like overanalyzing after the fact. Like in the movie, I was just like having such a good time.
That's exactly it. It really is like such an
Exactly.
environmental film. And I don't mean that because Madame Morrible controls the weather. Like when you're watching it, sometimes maybe to Grace's point, you do sort of get your head out of things to focus on things that are happening either from like a production perspective or a performance perspective. But like I just got so swept into it in the moment in a way that I did not expect from a show that I'm not a massive fan of, from a movie that has been more than a decade in the making, starring performers that are very talented, but you don't know if they're necessarily right for these roles. So much of this worked. And we'll see how this, ends up translating to award season coming up. But regardless, I think it has absolutely won over the vast majority of the world. And it is setting up so many exciting things to come with Wicked. And hopefully manifesting what Grace and Shannon, you were talking about in particular, of this kind of being a gateway for people to get to explore the wild, wonderful world of musical theater. We'll go around the horn one last time. If you want to give any final thoughts on Wicked and also plug anything you might be doing. Mari, let's start with you.
One, these Lush bath bombs are like only $8, and they
Whoa.
look so cool.
Are they sponsoring this?
They are not. I'm just saying. Okay. But anyways, if you want to hear me talk a little bit more about Wicked, over on the Recap Kickback, me and Chappelle and Isaiah, we cover a lot of things in like pop culture, like rap pop culture and stuff going on. In that episode, we talked about rap. We talked about what's the show on Netflix? Rhythm and Flow. But I also was able to sneak in a little bit about Wicked. So go check out the Recap Kickback by going to recapkickback.com and subscribing there. Also watch us on YouTube, youtube.com/@recapkickback. Of course, every Tuesday, me and Sarah Carradine bring True Crime Tuesdays to you by going to Crime Scene Pod. So go to crimescenepod.com. That's crime, SEEN pod.com. Even if you think you're subscribed to us, especially on Spotify, we've been having issues with Spotify lately. Please just go and make sure, like, resubscribe if you need to, just to make sure you're getting all of those episodes. And you can find me on Blue Sky at Mari Talks Too Much on Blue Sky. I'm not on the other place anymore, but I need to hold you guys accountable right now, not space. We need to come back and do like a best movie musicals like countdown thing.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
there are
I
so
need to watch more,
many
but
movie musicals I
watch
want to talk
again.
about
Yeah.
that we can just rip into and or praise. I would love to do like a ranking system.
Oh my God, yeah. Don't tell
There's
me it
some
was
I
a good
haven't
time.
seen in like a decade that I need to rewatch, but I think.
Oh, and there's also like there's the modern ones. There's also like yes, I know that there's a lot of
Grease,
competition for like best movie musical amongst a lot of the modern day ones, Wicked included. But like I'm a big sucker for Singing in the Rain, like any of that
Grease
golden age
2,
stuff.
underrated. Ugh. Maybe like an awards show for musicals. I
Well, listen,
wonder.
June,
I
June
wonder
is
if they
about
had one of those
June's about
things.
yeah, June's about 6 months away, so we can put a pin in that. Shannon, any final words? Stuff you like to plug?
Yes. Well, firstly, Mari sent the slush link, and it does look cool. And
There's multiple, not just the hat. There's also
Yeah.
like,
Oh, I
Yeah,
want the
there's-
one of the wizard's face.
yeah.
it's amazing. It says in every bath deserves a chance to fizz. You can deny.
Bubbles that defy
That's
gravity.
it's a little. I think it's a little distant, a little too much of a jump
That's
to
so
get to
good.
that
Oh my
copywriter.
God. Well, look, it works for me, and I think now
Mhm.
the lyric might be ruined because now that might be where I'm going every time I'm singing it in the shower. Oh my God, I sing it. I need these products. I've been doing the product placement this whole time, not even realizing it. So
Yes, you
okay,
have.
my birthday's in February. Anyway,
Is that your first plug? My birthday's in February.
That's weird. Shannon does it on every podcast, though.
Yeah.
You ever listen to the end of the
Yeah,
podcast?
that's
Shannon
why
always goes, "And my birthday's in February."
I'm literally singing Defying Gravity in the shower, and you're not going to give me Alphaba's broomstick bubble wand? Like, what are we doing? It's
What are we
like-
doing here?
Great. Wait, did you say before you were like you thought there were casting issues, and I feel like did we get to that? Like, what?
Yeah,
I just want to know your
just the
question
three.
marks.
My three.
Oh, the three non-singers.
Michelle
Okay.
Yeoh.
Mhm.
Yeah, Peter Dinklage is actually fine. It's just like he's not the best singer, and then Jeff Goldblum, who is fine as
He's
a
a
wizard.
scapegoat.
He's just not a great singer.
People hate that song. What am I plugging? You know, when is this coming out? Survivor? Survivor stuff. Australian Survivor coming up. Follow me at Shannon Gates everywhere. And
Yes, a very, very different world of Oz coming your way in 2025.
yes, exactly. So I can't believe that in all of the nicknames that are so much a core part of Australian Survivor, we've never had the Wizard of Oz. We've had the Golden God. We've had
True.
everything. But and I'm making someone next season the Wizard of Oz, and it'll be thematic and it'll be good.
Okay.
Love it.
All
The
right,
best
there we
player
go.
is going to be the Wizard of Oz.
Or just call them Jeff Goldblum, aka.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then refer to them on an exit interview as Jeff Goldblum and
That's
see
right.
if they understand the reference.
Yeah, because Australian Survivor players are usually really keyed into the discourse.
Yeah, it's going to be some sort of like battered rugby player, like, okay, what?
Yeah. Australian Survivor players are usually huge theater kids. Yeah, that's what we do. US Survivor players are all theater kids, as we've learned. New era.
Speaking of Australian Survivor, a lot of people tried to submit Australian Survivor on their We Know Scripted TV top 10 TV shows of the year, and I threw out their ballots, Shannon. Only scripted TV
What?
shows are allowed. Yeah, only scripted TV shows are allowed.
Well,
So I threw out
maybe
this.
tiered rankings are bad.
It did feel scripted at certain points, though. That's for
That's
sure.
right.
Don't say that. I mean, but this is what
Well-
is what people might say about Survivor. So don't
Yeah.
start getting into that.
So Josh and I are doing the top 10 TV shows of 2024 and the top 10 movies of 2024. The preview pod is in the feed, and you can find the ballot in there. So make sure you vote for that. Doing recaps of Dune Prophecy, although I think we're going to skip episode 5 and return for episode 6 for the finale due to some scheduling issues. Owen Jedi Knight and I are covering Star Wars Skeleton Crew. Mike, you and I are covering Silo as well. And then Tara and I talk all TV, all of it, all the time on the Tastemakers and tell you what you should and shouldn't watch. So I'm on social media at Hi From Grace or at Go From Grace, Mike.
And I am at a Mike Bloom type. Some big things that I'll plug as Shannon is talking about the time this is coming out. It will have been the end of the Survivor 47 season. So, I have a buttload of stuff there as we all decompress from an episode of Survivor that will be shorter than the length of Wicked. That might be the first time in Survivor history, which is a wild comparison to make. But the other big thing that's happening towards the end of the year is that Squid Game is coming out, talking about getting transported to a fantastical land. Squid Game season 2 coming out the day after Christmas for season 2, and it'll be myself and the aforementioned Chappelle covering that with daily recaps of season 2. So on the We Know Scripted side, be sure to check that out in addition to all the other great stuff we have going on. Grace teased some stuff, as well as our year-end stuff, as well as we look back on 2024 and look ahead as to what's coming in 2025. Presumptively, from all of our perspectives, mainly Wicked Part 2.
Wicked. How dare you? We just came up with a name.
No, you have to do it. Wicked.
Yeah.
I think you have to say it like the goat. That's
yeah.
how you pronounce
Yeah. That's a
It needs to be
scapegoat.
like it's almost like putting an apostrophe between the eyes, like wicked. That's how you truly am able to represent the goat and perhaps the goat of musical films. I would love to hear people's opinions about that as well as your overall thoughts about the movie. Casting choices, what you're looking forward to in part 2 as well. Be sure to let your thoughts be known on social media. If you're a patron of RHAP has a podcast in the Discord as well. And as this is on YouTube, in the comments to let your voices be heard. Sing out, sing proud. This was such a great time. I'm so happy we were able to get this group together to talk about an experience that we all really enjoyed, coming from very different backgrounds when it comes to knowledge of the musical, but all under the same umbrella in a manner of speaking, in our unabashed love of what this movie provided and what it will hopefully provide next year. It's safe to say we'll be back in November. We'll do a little bit of a wrap up of part 2, maybe talk about at that point to what's been teased before, if there's more stuff in this Wicked universe. Who is to say what 2025 has in store for us? But we're just going to keep on walking down that yellow brick road. Thank you all so much for listening. I hope everyone has a very happy end of the year. Attend a sing-along screening if you want to. Look that up. Grab a bath bomb if you'd like to do so. Until next time, everybody, take care. Bye-bye.